Order, please. Or don't stand yet. Everything we need about the school board is over there on the table at the entrance. I would ask everybody to please silence their phones. And I would ask that the board be respectful to each other here. And I would ask the audience or the visitors to be respectful to the board and to the speakers. Okay? Okay. With that being said, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll do roll call now. Director Sarkin.
Here.
Director Westby.
Here.
Director Addy is here. Director Yuan.
Here.
Director Reardon.
Present.
And Director Lager. And Director Westby, or Director Gilbert Dahl is absent. Let the record reflect that. Approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Support Reardon.
Motion by Director Lager, support by Reardon. Any discussion?
Do we have any additions?
I have no.
No, it's just, if you want to pull something or move it around.
Right.
No, I know what it's about, but we had plenty of communications, and I wondered if we're going to put something on the agenda about the cooperative sports or the Coca-Cola thing.
Co-op's already on there.
Co-op's already on there.
Okay, how about the Coca-Cola thing?
That was pulled for, the lawyers had pulled that due to the fact that there might have been some wording questions there. Noel, can you?
The contract?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, there were some wordings, questions that were brought up by your law firm, classic agency, so we thought it would be prudent to have them more time to go through that before you saw that. So I will suggest later that we have a work study session. There's a number of different topics. That would potentially be one of them that we're talking about at a work study session.
Okay, I'm glad you're doing that. And when you're talking about the contract, is the contract just that packet that we got? Because there was only like one page of, I'm asking.
But it's been pulled. I mean, do you want to, I guess go ahead and ask the question in regards to why it was pulled,
Just a
right?
clarification.
Okay, right.
The attorneys found some language in what? Because in that packet, there was only like one page of,
There's a longer contract.
okay, so we never saw that. We never saw a longer contract.
Correct.
Okay. Well,
It's not ready for the
So-
board to see
But
yet.
we already passed this in December.
No, we move forward,
We
Oh,
negotiate.
right?
okay, it wasn't to accept it.
It was not.
So everybody should have got a copy of that contract on Monday.
We did not.
Nope.
Nope.
That's why I'm asking, Bill.
We sent it out.
No. When
Was that
the
my-
revised one,
No, I know. But everybody was to have it for review. It should have been sent to everybody.
But if it was pulled because
Right.
it wasn't ready.
But that was after the fact.
yeah, we'll just wait for the review then.
All right,
That's fine with me.
all right. Any other questions, Polly? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Recognition of visitor input. We have Mr. Walton. Is he here? Does not look like he is here. Okay. We have Kevin Johnson. Yep, right up. Thank you.
Hello, directors. I'm Kevin Johnson. I'm the president of our Rock Ridge Hoops Club, which is a basketball booster club for both the boys and girls basketball programs. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk. It sounds like not everybody has seen that the Viking Coca-Cola agreement that's being proposed, but I did receive a copy of it and took a look at it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that from Booster Club and concession perspective. The agreement is for Viking Coca-Cola to have exclusive beverage sales across the district. That includes vending, school store, and the concession. So from a Booster Club, again, we're primarily dealing with the concession, and that's what the focus here is. So when Viking first had something, the initial, there's some initial excitement to get some equipment for our new concessions, all three of them across the new Rockridge High School. I had expressed my focus on still maintaining some flexibility on the product that we would have available. But now that I've seen what the agreement is, I don't have the same excitement about it. I don't see anything about equipment being donated as a part of that. The agreement appears to be a sales agreement between the school district and Viking Coca-Cola. So the equipment is kind of a cost of doing business for them, just like coolers that you'd see in a grocery store. There's also some upfront donation wording about a Powerade for the school, $25,000 donation, but that's in lieu of money that we would earn through the Powerade for the schools program. In addition to the vending side of things, that would be part of a policy. I see that we have a vending machine policy, so it appears to be something that the district would go forward and look at, like a request for proposal or bids for that. In addition, it was a term of 15 years, which seems like an awfully long time frame for an agreement on something like this, which includes Viking holding sales quotas for the district, whether it's through concessions or vending. So it kind of in summary for me is that I think this type of thing is something that the Booster Club should have input on. We have various groups that deal with the concessions and whether they purchase products on their own and bring it in, or they purchase through Coke or other area distributors. And I implore the board to go maybe set up a working session where each of the different booster clubs could then be a part of that discussion and that decision-making process. As the operators of the board of the booster clubs, I want to make sure that everybody has input into that.
Okay, all right, that's it. Time is up there, Mr.
Great, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Turn this on, turn off.
All right.
Other stuff.
So we are going to have a working session about that. Okay.
Item number 4, consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved, Reardon.
Moved by Reardon,
Support.
support by Director Yuhan. Any discussion?
I have correction for 4.1, the minutes of the January 23rd meeting, and I would like a little more information on 4.10.
4 point what, what's the second one?
4.1 and 4.10. Otherwise, I'll move to approve.
So what was the regular minutes? What was the correction you'd like to see?
Well, there's two things, I don't see it right now. I believe I voted against the Kraus-Anderson thing, and it was a unanimous vote. And then there was a mention of making a recommendation to the superintendent about going forward with finding a commercial realtor, but it really wasn't a recommendation, it was a reminder, because we have a resolution on the books from months and months ago. And, it hasn't been acted upon yet, so just change that wording around a little bit. That is a reminder that we had that on the books.
I do believe you are correct that it was to move forward to find a realtor.
Yeah, and then, like I say, I think on the Kraus-Anderson one, I'll tell you what, I think I voted no, but if I didn't have time to look at the video, and so whatever it says, we'll just change it.
What was the
It was at a, Kraus-Anderson, it was something point.
What number?
5 point, let's see, it was 9.9A1. Move to approve Kraus-Anderson, Construction Manager Contract Amendment Number 7. Said it passed unanimously. It's just a housekeeping thing. Because I've consistently voted against those.
I do believe, yeah, you were the only one that voted against that. So clerk, make a note of that, have that.
Deb will.
Deb.
Debbie?
Debbie, you made a note to make those corrections on the minutes of the last meeting?
And I can talk to her too.
Okay, all right.
And then 4.10, Chelsea Wienans for long-term sub. I was just curious as to what position that is for a long-term sub. What job is that?
Which one?
4.10, long-term sub teacher, effective approximately today, pending licensure. Chelsea Wienans?
Wine
I don't know, I'm sorry if I mispronounced it.
This is for an elementary position, I believe.
You know what building it is?
I believe this is in Parkfield.
Okay. And it says pending licensure. Did we not have any licensed applicants or?
Correct. And so also when individuals are getting their licensure, they have to go through a process. And so we always say that in case for some reason they do not get their license, but that is very rare for that to happen.
Okay, I do understand that, but we had no licensed applicants.
Correct.
Okay. All right, that's all.
Okay. No further discussion. Can I get a motion?
We already have it. Right, yeah.
I says, can I get a motion to?
We have a
No,
motion by Reardon,
Right.
second by Yuhan
but
to
no,
approve
yeah,
it.
yeah, can I, all right.
So it's a vote.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimous.
Sorry, Bill.
All right. Number 5, reports. Mr. Snell.
You guys are super efficient tonight.
We want you to get
That list is too long. Tim, slow down, would you please?
Right.
Good evening. It's nice to see all of you. Happy Valentine's Day tomorrow. I hope all of you have a wonderful day. I like chocolate. Some great donations coming through, as you saw in the consent agenda. Thank you to Jack and Maya Beyondich, Kristen Dojan, and the Blue Cross Blue Shield for their popcorn machine donation at one of the ball field concession. Scott Whitty for $200, and the Bezick family. That's a big one that has recently come through, and I'd like to share a email exchange with Maggie Bezick Spivey. And she wrote to me, Willie, I saw in the article in Mesabi Tribune about fundraising for the school, and I'm interested in making a donation. I'm a 1997 Virginia grad, and I'm now living in the state of Virginia. Let me know if there's an online platform or how this works. Fantastic job so far, raising $2.5 million. So I reached out to her, and her father, Stan Bezick, was a 65 grad, and then it rolls down to Sarah in 94, Sam in 95, Maggie in 97, Emily in 2000, Hannah in 2004, Molly in 05, as all the Bezick kids came through Virginia, and their mom, Carrie Bezick. Dr. Stan Bezick has passed, and the family would like to just their family be recognized, and we chose to do the, as you can see, we're going to do the Career Center. It'll be the Bezick Career Center at the new campus, a beautiful spot where we'll recognize their family for their wonderful donation. So we appreciate their $20,000 donation towards helping us do wonderful things at Rock Ridge High School. So thank you to the Bezick family for their wonderful donation. Continuing on with that, speaking of donations, the Golden Bear Foundation has opened its grant cycle, and we have gotten this out to all staff. So a special thank you to the Golden Bear Foundation for all of their donations that they make to Rock Ridge Public Schools and all of the work that they do. That's a wonderful group of people. And then the Wolverine Fund and the Rock Ridge Education Fund have both opened their grant cycles, and we've gotten that information out to all staff. So a special thank you to the Virginia Community Foundation for housing those grants and newly allowing us to manage that money how we feel with our own advisory board inside the district. Because they felt, as you know, I've told you in previous meetings, that we probably know more about what is needed than what their committee would know at the time. So they wanted to streamline that process. So all of those are up and running, and we thank everybody involved, everybody that donates to the Golden Bear Foundation, everybody that donates to the Wolverine Fund and the Rock Ridge Education Fund, and everybody that manages those funds for us. Those are outside groups managing funds for our school district. So thank you to everybody involved with that. We look forward to filling all the needs that the teachers and the coaches are putting forward right now. Let's see, the same holds true. We do have some internships going on, switching hats real quick, on site at the high schools. One at Parkview, one off-site, one not at the high school students. Rebecca Kowalski is doing a Parkview special education internship for this semester 2. Teresa Anderson is at the courthouse, period 1 this semester 2. And a kid that I might know, Sydney Speltz, is in a job shadow at North Star Elementary in grade 3 with Mrs. Tickenen Ashley. So our academy work is already off the ground. We've had many come through that I've mentioned before, and I'm sure Mrs. Clennon will be talking about some things that come up in her class here this second semester. So we'll continue to climb the academy ladder, get our kids out there, get our kids into the profession to find out if that's what they really want to do because they think they do. And hopefully the experience will help them make a decision as they move on.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you, Willie.
See you later. I think something comes up later. Any questions?
Great job.
Thanks, Willie.
Up next, 5.2, we have Dan Hazelton and Mark Winter up to discuss the WAIT. We are one team program for students.
Good evening. Just going to provide kind of a brief overview of what our represents and what things that they have going here. So Diversity Club presents the opportunity for any Rockridge students to come share life experiences that have impacted their lives in any way, past and present, positive, negative, without the fear of judgment that many often have. Students, if they're willing, will answer questions. If not, they will share what they want and then be left alone moving on to the next students. This allows students to identify and reflect on what events have been beneficial, those that have been detrimental. Also provides those who are listening to become aware of what we can do to become a better member of the community. We can't learn what we aren't taught. The focus is not changing others. The focus is about learning about others. Every person has different life experiences. Many students feel the need to keep them secret rather than embracing our truths. Members do have responsibilities to intentionally spread positivity through their actions. These actions can be as small as random smiles, wave to a stranger, because that's an attainable goal for everyone. And these are documented and provided by their advisor to their advisor each week. The advisor takes the leadership role in asking students questions, leading them through these discussions, making sure that it is a safe place for them to speak. And really, in a nutshell, it is a club that provides students with a safe place to talk without being judged and a chance to learn from each other. Questions you have?
And it's all voluntary.
For the
Their
students?
involvement in it.
Students is all voluntary, yes. It is a club open to everyone.
Is it a during school? I think you answered this, but I forgot. Is it a during school? Like a pull-out program?
It is Mondays during lunch,
Oh, okay.
so it is not pulling out of classroom time.
Okay, no other questions, or we'll move on to 5.3, so
Thank
you're up next.
Thanks. Just update for the board for Virginia High School. Some of you are new, but as you recall, I kind of talked earlier that we're really in the, at that time, we were in the first of the many lasts to come on Virginia High School. We're now getting to that point where we're starting to run on the last of the last as we near the end of the school year. So we just had Snow Week last week, which is obviously the last snow week for Virginia High School as Virginia High School. A lot of great things happened, a lot of fun for the students. A couple of highlights, obviously our coronation, the pep rallies, but also the Indigenous games that were shared between the two schools. Virginia bused some students over to Evelyn, and in the morning brought a group, afternoon brought sophomores, morning were freshmen, and just did a lot of different Indigenous activities, Indigenous games. The students came back and just had a blast. So that was a lot of fun. As we move on, hard to believe, well, maybe it's not hard to believe with the weather, but winter sports are starting to wind down. We have a couple that have already concluded, so we're kind of nearing the end of the winter sports season. We have some skiers off to the state meet tomorrow, so that's exciting for those two. And then we'll also be entering a lot of the section competition here very soon. Kind of the real exciting things for our teachers, and I'm going to kind of speak as a whole for all our Rockridge High School teachers. Last Wednesday, we did go into the building as a staff for the first time. So we had our tours in the building and really let them explore their spaces. For many of them, they had not been in the building in over a year, and in some cases had never been in the building. So very excited, very anxious. There are definitely some changes that will be coming forward. It's a different space, it's new space. There's a lot less storage. They're a little nervous about downsizing, but we're talking about all of those things and really making those plans, and a lot of times being spent in our PLCs as to how we're going to move, what rooms we're going to be using, classes, all of those types of things we're all working toward, and really starting that process now so we are ready for it when it comes closer to June and then into the fall. Also hard to believe, we're nearing midterms for the third quarter, so those will be coming up in about a week. So it seems like we just started the year and really just started third quarter, but we're already halfway through. So all of that is coming very quickly. The other part, and the part that I'm heavily working in right now, is the registration work. Over the next 3 weeks, for all of our Rockridge secondary students for the fall of 23-24, we will be working on registration. So the registration handbook is out on the website right now. And if you are looking for it, it is on the Rockridge High School website, which was just created since we hadn't needed a Rockridge High School particular, but now as we're all combining, that's where we decided to put it. So that's kind of exciting. And then we will have some class meetings and start our online registration for students choosing which classes they're hoping to get into for next fall. The overall goal is still on track. My goal all along was to have registration done near the end of February. We're right on track with that, with the hopes still of having students' schedules in their hands by the time they leave for summer. So the hope is by June 1st, we're going to have schedules ready. Cross our fingers. I think it's definitely doable, so that's still our plan. A couple other things just with the new building. We do have a group that meets every other Wednesday, if not after school time, a group of teachers and administrators that are trying to set expectations for the new building. Really, what is the space is going to look like? What are we going to expect our students to be doing in those spaces? What behavioral expectations we're going to have, all of those types of things. So starting that work now so we can really move forward with that as we go through. And some of that is already going to be starting this Friday as we have a athletic event in the gyms. We have some students that are working on some digital video things to show as advertisement and how we should behave and how we should act at athletic events that we're going to show during timeouts and different things like that. And then just in general, prepping our students as to what we are going to expect when we step into the high school and how we expect you to behave as a athlete, as a fan, as a spectator, all of those types of things. And then the last thing kind of on that, and I'm going to bolt out of here pretty quick, is we do have orchestra concert tonight, so I'm going to head to that very quickly as we're starting to get into the second round of music concerts and things like that. Any questions you have for me?
I do have a question. Yes. You said that you just had snow week last week, and I had gotten a few emails from parents with saying that that it was set up to where they were called students, but it wasn't their son or their daughter, and there were many phone calls made to the office. It did get changed, but where are we with that?
And again, it's a discussion that we're going to have. There are several discussions that I think as a school and a district, we're going to need to have, that the rest of the state is addressing as well. And it is how do we look at it? My personal opinion, and again, this is just mine right now, as we're going to have these bigger conversations, but to let the students, ask the students how they want to be identified there. If they want to be called a student, if they want to be called son or daughter, some may want to be called grandson or grandmother, because we don't know for sure who's raising them in the home currently. So those types of things, but I think we need to let the students decide. It needs to be that choice. I know there was the issue that, and it wasn't necessarily Virginia High School, but as a whole there was. I know in Evelyn they had some conversations, and it spilled over to us as well. And that was kind of what our takeaway was from it, is if we're going to have those kinds of identifications, at least in the immediate, let's let the students decide.
I'll speak to that too, because there seems to be more blended families and families who, like the mom's remarried. And so introducing as daughter or son, it might just be better to introduce as student, because that individual, their family is blended. Or for instance, if a family, like you had mentioned.
Well, if it's done case by case, that's fine, but when a student the mom wants to hear son.
Well, and I think that's what he just said.
Right.
It'd go with that.
But there was a glitch, correct, in the beginning?
Yes, I think there was.
Yes, that's what I was asking.
But also, again, there's a lot of kids that are being raised by grandparents right now. I mean, we're seeing a rise in that too. So I think that, maybe it is identification, whatever, but I do also know that it's that as well. And the families are looking different.
Thank you.
When you're talking about how students want to identify themselves, are you also referring to what pronouns they want to be referred to?
In some cases, yes.
We'll have to decide if that's where we want to go as a district.
Well, that's probably state law is going to dictate that more than the district.
May or may not, but it hasn't so far. So I wanted to clarify that, that's all.
Any more questions for Mark? Are you done, Mark?
I'm done.
Any more questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
5.4, Rockridge Draft Bill Time Study Update with Mr. Voss.
Good evening, everybody. So right around Thanksgiving time is when I actually started looking at transportation next year. I want to get a early on it, try to finish it up earlier. So I engaged our routing software company to help me along with this. They presented a draft summary to me of what their findings were. First thing I want to say is that they feel that we are running about as efficiently as we can right now. They found very few things that they would change, except maybe up on the north side of Virginia. There's some overlapping routes that could probably be done away with. That was a deliberate thing that I did this year because I just didn't know how busing the kids to North Star was going to impact the numbers on the bus. So that was a deliberate thing that I did. But what they told me earlier, late last year, is really wouldn't worry about the numbers that you see on the buses because it's not really what it's going to be. It turns out that they were right in what they were telling me. They presented us with 4 different scenarios. The first scenario is kind of what we're doing right now. And I want you to keep in mind that what they're talking about here is on-time delivery and on-time pickup. which means not getting the kids to school any more than 15 minutes before the bell time and leaving 5 minutes after the bell time. So keep that in mind. And that's kind of what they're focusing on. Right now, we are running 23 buses. It is, however, not on-time delivery as they would define it. Some of the kids get to school a little bit earlier, but everybody gets there on time. So some are a little bit early in the morning, some are a little bit late, picked up in the afternoon. It takes 23 buses to do that. Now, to put everybody on time, we'd have to have more buses to do that each day. And scenario one says that we'd have to have 26 buses to do that in the morning and 36 buses in the afternoon to accomplish that on-time definition of what they're saying it is, versus what we're doing now. It's the least what we're doing right now in our what we're doing right now is the least disruptive to the school district and just transportation in general. The second scenario actually moves the bell time for the high school back by about 25 minutes. Now that helps in the afternoon. In scenario two, it helps in the afternoon. We'd only need 23 buses, but we'd still need 26 in the morning to do it. So we need 3 more buses in the morning. It really has a difference to do with where the kids are waiting. So in scenario one, the kids would be at the school. And in scenario two, we'd pick up the elementary kids first, so they'd be on the bus a little bit longer while we're waiting for the high school to get out. Scenario three, it goes from a tier 1 busing to tier 2 busing. What I mean by tier 2 busing is just think about the bus that goes to Tower right now. We go to Tower, we pick up the high school or the elementary kids first, bring them to town, then we go back to Tower and get the high school kids. So you're actually doubling your expense, probably making more full-time employees. It's gonna put an hour and 20 minutes between elementary and high school. It's gonna affect, it'll impact if, let's just say we had the high school a little bit later in the day, it's gonna affect athletics later in the afternoon. It's gonna be your shortest ride time because all these kids get delivered on time, but you're doubling everything that you're doing. And scenario 4 just kind of flips that as the elementary versus the high school. You know, there's disadvantages to and advantages to each one. The fourth scenario, where the high school kids would get picked up first and the elementary would be later in the day, it creates a problem for parents that depend on their high school kids to get their young brothers and sisters on the bus. It's a problem. I've talked to Dr. Schmidt on this once, and we met with the consultant, so we've met a couple of times on this. It looks kind of like the best way for us to go, at least right now, is to do exactly what we're doing right now. Try to make it a little bit more efficient. We can maybe juggle some of the bell times between the elementary and the high school on the north side and on the south side. So there's some things that we can do to make it more efficient, get rid of some of the overlapping things, and I think that's probably going to be the best. But that's the easy. So.
And then the other thing we have is everything's going to change in 2 years again anyway.
It's going to change, yeah.
Yeah. So.
But it should actually get better because of the Park View and the North Star Art physically closer together.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Do you have a lot of kids coming from the Tower area? I mean, could it be a suburban picking them up? No, okay, that was my only question.
When we come from Tower, Embarrass, Cook, we're bringing in 35, 40 kids. Same thing with Embarrass. Not quite so much out of Cook, but it's still 20 kids. So we have a lot of students up in that Lake Vermilion, Tower, Sedan area.
Bob, scenarios 3 and 4, that's basically like a double bus run or not? Double bus run. And did you cost scenarios?
I did not, I mean, we'd have to buy more buses.
Well, as far as fuel and mileage and
Yeah.
putting miles on
I mean,
buses?
just on an equipment side, what would we figure?
We figured a minimum of $500,000 every year.
For,
New buses.
Two-tier busing. type
oh yeah, I just meant, did you cost out all of them? To have that comparison too as part of a rationale and a, because there's so many variables in there, right? It's the buses, it's the maintenance, it's the mileage, it's the cost of fuel, it's wear and tear.
In scenario 3 and 4, it's double everything you're doing
Okay.
now.
We can figure out, Director Sorkin, the least inexpensive option is frankly to keep doing what we're doing. If we do any of the options they're giving us, it's a minimum of $500,000 extra.
Okay. And then as far as we're talking about cost, what did this cost so far, this draft? Drafting?
But they're going to help us build routes and all of that. 500?
About 85?
And the other big problem we have is we're always searching for bus drivers anyway.
Well, it's the employees.
Like any
that-
school
I mean,
district, yeah.
Yes. You know, they're great jobs and people are just not out there looking. And
Any more questions for Bob? Okay, thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you.
5.5, Minnesota student survey results. The presenter is Cassandra Haney.
I'm going to briefly be up here, member of the school board, to frame this why Cassandra is here. She's so the reason why she's coming up, or we've had some conversation about behavior in buildings. And we've talked about, we've heard from this person or that person. So why don't we find out what the kids say? So the kids just finished the Minnesota student survey. This is a requirement to the PCN grant. This is that $1 million grant that we have over 5 years. Cassandra runs it. So I asked her to come up here so she can tell you, what do the kids say about how they feel things are in the building. So take it away, Cassandra.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Cassandra Haney. I'm the Positive Community Norms Grant Coordinator for Rockridge. Thank you for taking the time to have me here today. Quite a few slides, but I will go through them as quickly as is reasonable.
Zach here dropped out a slideshow for some reason.
Probably bump something. Yeah, okay. So these are all the things that are involved in the slide deck. I'm not going to go deeply over any of them, but I'm happy to provide a PDF of this for the board. There's a lot of information that's kind of already been compiled for you so that you can look through it easily. Also, the full results of the Minnesota Student Survey from 2022 are at the web address on the top so that you can look through everything. I didn't include everything in here. It's a 68-page monster of a document. There's a lot of good information, like how many vegetables students eat in a week and how many books they have in their home. I didn't include that in there because while that's important, I didn't find it relevant. Just so you are aware that there's a lot that's being skipped. Before we talk about the Minnesota Student Survey, it's really important to answer the question, can we believe the data? One of the first things you hear whenever we talk about the student survey is that students lie. I just want you to know that the survey is scrubbed for inconsistencies. So if a student, for example, says in one question, no, I don't drink. And another question, they say, yes, I drink 7 times a week. Throughout the individual surveys, it's scrubbed. So we took this on February 15th of 2022. The data just came out and was made public within the last month. So it takes a long time for them to get it to where it's presentable and accurate. It's also one of the longest running student surveys in the country. It began in 1989. Local data trends are consistent with state data trends. So there may be some items where we could use the term, it's not exactly correct, but where we're better or worse than the state average. But the trends are consistent with the state trends, and trends are consistent over time. So you don't see some wild thing happen one year in student data. There are trends that they follow. So yes, we can believe the data. This I just had in there for your information. I'm not going to spend time on it. It's pretty exciting just to see that we have a lot of students interested in 2 and 4 year college. Perhaps as a administration, we'd want to look at some of our students who just say they want to go straight into working and looking at if there are a certificate or apprenticeship program after they graduate. So a lot of the data that we're going to talk about is a true balance of hope and concern. Okay, most of our students are making good choices. Most of our students feel good about being in school. Most of our students feel they have somebody in the school that they can go to. That does not in any way diminish the concerns that you will see. Okay, there are things that you'll see that you're like, oh gosh, I didn't realize that many students were being bullied. I didn't realize that many students didn't know there was somebody that cared about them in the school. Those are real concerns, and I don't want to diminish that, but we just need to keep a healthy balance. So a good example of this is students were asked, do you feel safe at school? Approximately 33% of Rockbridge students said they agreed or strongly agreed with that. That's the vast majority of our kids. Good. That doesn't mean that it's okay that 17% of our students don't feel safe at school. So that's that balance of hope and concern. Just for your information, so when I was in high school, cyberbullying wasn't a thing yet. It's a thing now. So I didn't know what the numbers meant. I had no idea how that compared to everyone else. So just for your information, I included the statewide data to show that the trends that we're seeing are quite substantially similar to statewide trends. Again, that doesn't mean we don't want to talk to our students about how to be kind and how to care for each other, how to talk to each other, how to keep yourself safe online. But it is remarkably similar to statewide trends. Bullying, I know we've had some instances of bullying that I'm aware of, and I'm sure some that I am not aware of. As a mom, even if my kid was bullied once, seeing that most students have never experienced bullying doesn't mean that that would make that any less real or serious, or that we wouldn't want to find a way to deal with it. This is just to put everything into perspective for each of you. And then when we look at students who say that they have been the one that has done bullying, one, that also reinforces the fact that you can trust the data, because that is very similar to, like, the numbers make sense when we look at how many of our students have been in trouble for some of these things. But then how do we reach those kids? How do we reach kids that are doing the bullying and perpetrating, that are making comments or jokes that are hurting others? One of the things we talk about a lot is, it's called ACEs for short, but it's Adverse Childhood Experiences. So those are potentially traumatic events that happen between ages of 0 and 17. It has long been studied that there are, these are linked to, higher ACEs scores are linked to chronic illness, potential substance use problems, mental illness. And so this is just showing you where we're at for Rockbridge. We tend a little bit higher than the state average. So in 1997, they did a very comprehensive ACEs study of 17,000 individuals. The data was published in 1998 by Kaiser Permanente. They found that students or children that were exposed to 2 ACEs 4 times as likely to become alcoholics. Those exposed to 3 or more ACEs were 3.6 times more likely to use illicit drugs. 4 or more ACEs were 12 times as likely to attempt suicide. And for those with 6 or more, their life expectancy dropped by 20 years. So then when you take that back and look at our students that have 2 or more ACEs scores, that's where we need to think, okay, what are we doing to help make sure that these students are going to be successful? So what can we do? Because that's a lot of concern, right? So what can we do about it? I can't go into somebody else's home and change and make their house perfect. I cannot even go into my home and make my house perfect. Well, I try. But there are some things we can do as a district and some things we can do as a school. For example, helping students to feel a sense of belonging in the school. Helping students enjoy community traditions in school. Snow Week, for example, or some of the things that we do as a school are things that they have found, they're called positive childhood experiences. They counteract adverse childhood experiences. And then being an adult that genuinely takes interest in students. So those are things that we can do. We can't fix everything, but we have control of what we have control of. And there's starting to be some really good data on how much those can counteract ACEs. So good information to follow. Kind of on the heels of that is this perception of care. As somebody who works for the district, this is, to me, the most painful data that is in the Minnesota Student Survey. I will say that it is right in line with state data. So it's not that Rock Ridge is terrible and kids feel uncared for. This is very in line with state data. But it might mean that we as adults do a bad job showing students that we care, and doing it in a way that students feel that they're cared about. So for example, if you're a teacher and you really care about students, and so you sub in a different teacher's class on your prep hour, because you want to make sure that a teacher is there instead of somebody that's just going to have them do a study hall, and you want to teach the class for them and help them continue their learning that day. Your students might not be able to go to you during your prep hour because you don't have the time. So they don't feel cared about, even though what you're doing is because you care about kids, right? So trying to figure out how we show kids that we care, and asking our kids, what's a way that teachers have showed you care? I know Jill Clennon last year did a great job with the National Honor Society asking students just that, and they presented to teachers. This is in here really just for your information as a board. Again, I'm happy to share this with you. Don't care who you are, any number of 10th graders, I don't care how small that number is, having sex is a major concern, and any number of our students that are not using protection, it's a major concern. So just maybe as a community and as families, we need to make sure that we're sharing our values with our students, and making sure that they can be emotionally, mentally, and physically safe. Mental health and suicidal thoughts. So to me, it doesn't matter what the state data is, these are large numbers to me. Which of our the number of our students that have long-term mental behavior or emotional problems, long-term meaning more than 6 months, and the number of our students have seriously considered suicide in the last year or more than a year ago. Those are really high numbers. This year we were able to hire a social worker and another counselor, I believe through some grant funding that we got. So hopefully that has provided more resources for our students, and then also taken some off of teachers who would be supporting those students. So the school board will have to look when that grant funding runs out on how to continue providing the help many of our students need. We'll talk a little bit about substance use, and I'll tie this into why this matters with behavior. To me, this is my favorite slide. I love the fulcrum because when you look at the protective factors, caregiver involvement, positive norms, positive peer relationships, there are risk factors we cannot do a darn thing about, right? But this kind of gives us the power to be able to balance that a bit. Some of our students may still choose to try substances. We hope that fewer make that choice, but hopefully then fewer will move on to chronic substance use. So the framework I work under is called the Positive Community Norms Framework. It's an evidence-based strategy created by Dr. Jeff Linkenbach of the Montana Institute. It's used by the Centers for Disease Control and countrywide. The reason we use it as a district, yes, it was tied to grant funding, but the reason our district was interested in the grant funding was because it works. So I'm in cohort 4, so it's the 4th iteration of a 5-year grant. And not only in the first 3 cohorts did substance use decrease, but it continued to decrease after the grant was over. The cohort 3 hasn't been over long enough to show that, but 2022 data is just coming out and it shows the trends continuing to decrease. So for Rock Ridge, here is some of our actual and perceived norms. So in the Minnesota Student Survey, they say things like, do you drink? Do you think most students drink? Or and how often do you drink? How often do you think most students drink? And so that what students think is a huge risk and protective factor for those students, because if you think that most students drink, you have a higher likelihood of choosing to drink. If you think most students don't, you have a more higher likelihood of not choosing to drink yourself. So one of the things that's really concerning, and when we're talking about perception of behaviors, so when you look at 10th graders, most of our 10th graders have never vaped. This is good. Most of our students think that most students vape, and actually when you dig down into it, most of our students think that most students drink or vape daily. And so when you think about that perception change, and when you think about students' feeling of safety and perception of safety when they use the restroom, because that we know is a big issue in our school. When we go into places in the Virginia high school, we have a lot of places where the cameras just don't reach. When you think about where students are concerned about going, it's partly because of the perception they have of what's going on around them. So you have to forgive me, this is from 2019 data. As I said, it takes a long time for them to scrub the data, so we do not have these protective and risk ratios for the 2022 data. But students who correctly believe that most students don't vape are 6.5 times less likely to vape themselves. As with alcohol, students who correctly believe that most don't use alcohol are 5.5 times less likely to report actually using alcohol themselves. So getting that message out that most don't drink, most don't vape, most don't use marijuana is really important. So that's why hopefully you will see a whole bunch of stuff to visit. So what's actually happening at Rock Ridge? I reached out to our principals and our dean to ask, and I said, can you let me know how many of our students are initiating violent behavior? How many of our students are involved in destructive behavior, destructive to property? And is there anything else that stands out to you in the data? And so the thing that was added by our dean and our principal at Evelyn was the number of students that were caught either vaping, using tobacco or alcohol. And as you can see, 98% of our students are not engaged in violent or destructive behavior. Of course, not 100% of students who are doing something wrong get caught, right? But this is not like huge numbers of kids that are getting in trouble and doing things that they shouldn't be, right? That also doesn't mean that it's not causing a big problem. There was one kid who shoved stuff in a toilet, and that, I mean, that's expensive to fix. It's a mess, it stinks, and it affects tons of kids around one kid, right? So I'm not saying that it's not a concern. I'm not saying we don't have to figure out what to do about it. I'm not pretending I have the answers to what to do with that particular student. But really, by and large, we've got a lot of really great kids, right? One of the core assumptions of the work that I do is that the positive exists, it's real, and it's worth growing. And the fact that 98% of our kids are making good choices, I mean, that is real positive that we can kind of hold on to. So what are we doing about it? Mark talked about this just a little bit. How are we setting ourselves up for success in the new building? We have a gorgeous new building. It's also very expensive, and we'd like it to remain beautiful and well respected. So we do have a culture and climate team. It's open to all high school staff and meets bi-weekly. We have really good partners that come to those meetings. We have front desk staff, counselors. It's mostly led by our dean, who we're just so lucky to have. Our principals come to that meeting, and we have teachers. So it is quite the gamut of folks that attend. We're focused on setting clear expectations intentionally and then sharing them with staff and students. And we're working to intentionally create a positive climate and belonging for our staff and students. So right now we're identifying and defining behavior expectations. We're going to be sharing those with staff. So their expectations of the students, a need for consistency with staff, not just for enforcing them expectations, but acknowledging the desired behaviors that we want, then helping create staff norms for collaborative areas. So for example, there's spaces where 10 teachers will have a space. Are students allowed in there? Are your kids, your personal children allowed in there? And can you cook fish in a microwave? I've heard 3 times. So, and then we'll be sharing those with students. So posters being very explicit about what the expectations are. In the beginning of the year, kicking off and sharing school expectations with students. I know at least Principal Manny has asked that those also be shared with 6th graders going forward, which is good. So this is something that we'll teach to 100% of students, right? We'll share this with everybody. 80 to 90% of our kids are going to follow with very little further directive. And we will encourage and reinforce the things that we see that are happening, catch kids doing something right. 5 to 15% might need some redirection and a plan. And those, our principals and our dean will work on how to respond to them. And some of that will just be reteaching those expectations. And then 1 to 5% will need some kind of individualized intervention. And then we also want to create a very welcoming environment for our staff, our students, and our community. This is our new home, and we want it to feel like that, not just sharing it with the public, but also making sure our staff feel like it's their place to be, and our students. That is all I have. I tried to, hopefully I didn't talk too fast, but any questions?
Good information.
Very interesting. Well done.
Sandra, can we get copies of the Minnesota Student Survey and our results for Rock Ridge?
So all of them are posted online, but I will send you
Just the Rock Ridge ones?
the thing that's a little messy about it, so I can't just print it. Actually, I'll see if I can. I might be able to download the PDF of each one. It'll be a huge document, but I'm happy to do it because you have to look by grade. So it won't give you Rock Ridge all together. It gives you Rock Ridge 8th grade, 11th grade, 9th grade separately. But yes, I can download PDFs and happy to do that.
And that that Minnesota Student Survey, different age categories got different questions, I understand?
5th grade there are a lot of the questions in there, especially any that had to do with sexual behavior, were not asked 5th graders. There was one question that was, do you feel comfortable talking to a police officer? That was not asked to older students. It was only asked to younger students. So yeah, there's some variation, but very little.
So how many different ones were there for, what, 5th, 8th, and?
No, like 5.
Okay, 5th, 8th, and?
5th, 8th, 11th.
5th, 8th, and 11th.
5th, 8th, 9th, and 11th.
9th and 11th, okay. And when you're talking about the statistics, is this group or any of these groups or any of your programs tracking for the behavioral part, like truancy records, absentee records, statistics, maybe arrests, maybe court appearances, maybe like the school resource officer reports?
Yeah, so
those are more statistically, concrete.
Sure. So our SRO is part of our coalition because I work with the coalition, and then we also work closely with the police departments. So we track things, for example, the number of, because we're very focused on substance use prevention. We focus a lot on, the number of establishments in our area that fail their compliance checks, for example. Truancy, I've worked some with truancy. I've presented at a truancy forum. And actually my supervisor works a lot with the folks that do that. So we have access to a lot of that information. And then we also have another student survey that we do each year called the Positive Community Norm Survey, which is just about substances and not about kind of all the other stuff. But the numbers for the behaviors, that came directly from like the actual number of students that are actually, that is data from our office.
That's what I was talking about more, that we can document and track,
Yeah.
that. And because self-reporting surveys and things, of course, aren't as accurate, but they can be very, very telling and very good information. But then when you compare those against this type of data and attendance, and like I say, truancy, I don't know. Our districts used to work more closely with the courts and truancy. I don't know if we still do or not. Or are the courts being overwhelmed? Are they not taking on those types of things? Are they passing them by? So those are another important things, I think, relationships and statistical things.
Yeah,
to look
no,
at.
I absolutely agree. And the correlation between truancy and substance use is, I mean, there's a pretty direct correlation. Just like a lot of the other things that were mentioned there, I mean, there's a pretty.
Sandra?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, 5.6, 561, rough draft equity plan.
Thank you, members of the school board. I'll do it then. Cassandra says, so what are we going to do about it? So I have 4 things to talk about tonight to update the board. One of them is the equity plan. This is a rough draft. This is the one I'm not asking the board to do anything with this tonight. I'm just asking you to have it, look at it. This is the one I'm going to suggest we talk about at a work study session along with some other topics. I think this would be a good topic to talk at a work study session, delve into a little longer, go a little bit slower in this one, because this is a topic that I'm not sure this has been broached a lot on the range. It's very common in other parts of the state for some type of an equity plan to exist. But I freely admit, this is new for folks up here. So I think just going a little bit slower, I think there's some wisdom in that. Now, along with the equity, I don't want to say this, is that we do not want to get into the politics of this. We are not supposed to be involved in the political sphere on that one. We are agnostic. That is how I'm viewing this. That is what our goal is. I know there's a lot of things on the national scale that brings out passion and emotions on both sides, but that's not our job to figure out what's going on in the national scale. Our job is the kids here, what we're saying the kids do, where we want the kids to go, and how do we get our kids from point A to point B. That's our job with the kids. Along with equity is that, and this is a word that causes a lot of confusion, and I freely admit that. Equity, and I need to say this, does not mean that every kid gets the same thing. It does not mean that we want every single kid to end up the same thing. I've heard this, everybody's going to get an A. No, that's not equity. Everybody's going to start. No, that's not equity. Equity means you're going to have access to a classroom. You're going to have access to the basketball team. You're going to have access to something. We'll get you in there. What you do with it is up to you. So equity, it's really about access. Does everybody at least get a fair shake to get into a class, to get into something, to get into an activity? Once they get into there, it's up to the kids. Now, we need to create everything so it works, and we're giving them a fair shake, but you still got to work hard. We're not giving anybody anything. We're not handing out smiley faces and stickers and warm fuzzies just to make everyone feel good. You got to earn it. You got to work. You want an A, you want to get that AP score so you can use it in college? Work hard. Do your stuff. But we're going to help you if you need assistance on that one. So on an equity, it's about what's fair. Now, I also need to say this, and I've used this example. Every single taxpayer in the Rockridge District is the recipient of equity. The state of Minnesota actually calls it equity. It's because when we passed the bond issue back in 2019, we got a lot of money from the state of Minnesota. We did get money from the IRRR. We got a lot of money from the state of Minnesota. Why do we get so much money from the state of Minnesota? Because this is a poorer area of the state. So what the state of Minnesota does, when poorer areas of the state go for past bonds, we just don't have as much money. It's harder for us to raise money than it does in some wealthier areas. So the state of Minnesota gave us more money than what they gave to Edina, Minnetonka. One of those districts passed a bond issue. We get more money. Every single taxpayer has received equity because of how the state of Minnesota defines equity, and it helps us. The other thing, I was watching the Super Bowl, and at the very beginning, they had fighter jets. There were 5 of them. I think there were 5 that went and flew over the stadium. Did you catch who was flying those fighter jets?
Females.
Female. Never happened before. Why did the Air Force send 5 female pilots over the Super Bowl for the first time? It's equity. Why should all the guys be flying the fighter pilots? Why should they be doing that? Why can't women fly the jets? And they did. That's the Air Force paying attention to equity. The women got into it, they worked hard, they had to pass the sequence, they had to do the test, they had to do all that other kind of stuff. They're not going to put somebody in those planes who can't fly those. And on the equity part of it, then I'll talk briefly about the plan, is we have to realize that equity is not just about the color of your skin. Part of it is 20% of all our kids are non-Caucasian. That's 500 kids. 1,250 of our kids are female. That's also about equity. We have 800 kids in our school district who are on free or reduced meals, or they're eligible to take it as determined by poverty levels. That also is about equity. It's about kids who don't have a lot of money being able to participate in sports, activities, and the academic classes. So equity is about a number of different things. It is about color of the skin. It is about giving people equal access and getting them in there. But it is also about gender, and it's about poverty. So there's a bunch of different things that are also into the equity part of it. And the last thing I'll say about this one, because people ask me about this all the time, why are we doing this up here, Schmidt? We've never done this before. Why do we need to go into this? Well, we're designing career academies. This is not a normal high school. So we are doing things with our kids so that they know how to act when they get into a world of work. So they're making smarter decisions to go into the world of work. So imagine 2 kids. So the kid over here, they go through our career academy. Do we want this kid over here to know how to work with other people? Do we want this kid to know how to work with people from other cultures? Do we want this kid to know how to work with people who aren't like them? Do we want this kid to know how to work with people who have different backgrounds? Imagine a kid over here, same career academy. We don't put this kid and help this kid learn how to work with other people. We don't help this kid to work with people from other cultures. We don't help this kid to work with people from other backgrounds. Those 2 kids, you tell me, which kid is going to get hired faster and which kid is going to be more successful down the road? That's also why we're doing this. Because in the Career Academy, we want our kids, frankly, to have a leg up. We're going to take care of our kids and teach them and train them and help them so they can do the best job they can. Now, the equity plan that you have in front of you, how did it come to be? This started with the strategic plan, and our strategic plan right now is about 53 pages long. So this part of the strategic plan is about 4 or 5 pages. So this is 4 or 5 pages out of a 53-page document. But this is also along the area of what are you going to do about it? So there are some things in here that basically there's 2 main goals. You've seen this already. I did work with a committee to work through this, to give ideas. 4 of you on this board attended at least one of those meetings and got the opportunity to talk with the folks and go back and forth in conversation about some of the topics. And I don't know what you said in your group, but 4 of you had the opportunity and were there and saw who was there and heard and participated in the discussion. So a lot of this boils down to there's some lists of things in there like activities, and there's some lists on lagging and leading indicators. Those I think we need to talk about a work study session. So I want to give you time to think about this, talk to people, and then we take this into a work study session and then talk some more. And so we will be continuing updating, making it so it makes more sense and what works here in Rock Ridge, what will have our kids here in Rock Ridge. I'm going to pause right now and ask for any questions from any board member.
I have one question here on the definition of equitable access, and what is this meaning when it says the equitable access requires that all students have a just, fair, inclusive access to the educators that would best meet their needs. So when you're saying best meet their needs, what is that saying?
You're looking at the state of Minnesota definition?
Correct.
The first page? We do that all the time. For example, here's how this works. Happens all the time. Parents call us up and say, hey, my kid's taking such and such, but I really like this teacher. Can my kid get in this teacher's classroom? And sometimes we're able to make it happen. Sometimes we can't make it happen. So that's what that means to me. We have parents request teachers all the time. And so would that continue? Yes, that absolutely would continue. What that means though, however, is that we are not, if somebody wants a certain adult teacher for something like that, from a school point of view, I mean, if you want me to do this, I'll tell you, but you're going to get sued and you'll lose, is that we just say no, 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 all the time. Any request that comes in, any special teacher, any special para, any special like that, we just say no. That would be inequitable access because the parents and the kids aren't getting what they want. So that's what that is to me.
So when you say that is to you, so then I'm taking it that that definition is subjective. It can mean something else to somebody else.
No, let me take that back and say that is a commonly understood definition of what that means within the education world.
Okay.
So if we have a student who, for whatever reason, we feel or the parents feel or the child feels they will do better with a certain teacher, would we listen to that parent and kid and teacher about should we move a kid around? Yeah, we'd listen to that kid, the parent.
So if that's a goal, equitable access or equal opportunity for students, if that's a goal, does that mean we're not doing a very good job right now? We don't have that? We don't have that good fair access to classes, to courses, to opportunities, to activities? I mean, I would think that we've been doing that all along. We should have been.
based upon what, and you, Director Sorkin, heard them say this, based upon what the group felt, their answer was no, that's not happening all the time. We feel like sometimes our kids don't have equitable access. We feel sometimes it's not working in the favor of our kids.
Well, you know, in anything, we're never going to reach 100%. We do the best that we can. And I think if we haven't been trying to give equitable access to academic and other activities, then we haven't been doing our job. We can always do better, but I think we just need to leave it at that. We all want that. But you know, there are controversial things. When you said that not every kid gets the same thing, but they get equal access and they do what they will with it, whether they take advantage of it or don't take advantage of it, that's on their shoulders. But that's not what the definition is. It says to ensure an equitable outcome. You know, we have structural, the definition, structural and institutional barriers require systemic change to allow for distributing the resources, information, and other support depending on the student's situation to ensure an equitable outcome. Equitable outcome, that's so different than equitable access.
You're saying about the state of Minnesota definition.
Well, yeah, but this is in our thing.
And I believe what they're talking about there is not that students are all going to have the exact same outcome, but that the resources that we have, what we're doing, that's going to be equitable. I believe that's what they're talking about in that definition.
It's really not what it says, and it's not how the whole item, argument, issue is framed out there, here, there, and everywhere. It's the equal outcome, not the equal opportunity. Like we were all taught in school, our country is about equal opportunity and not equal results. And this is like flip-flopped. It's kind of turned on its head.
I'm talking about Rock Ridge here, not the nation.
Well, I'm talking about here too.
Almost no teachers who are going to say, I'm going to give kid an A just because they show up.
I never said that. I never said that. I never said that. But what do you mean by an equitable outcome then? What's your definition of an equitable outcome?
They're talking about resource distribution and making things are deliberately handed out, that we're paying attention to that. So kids who, for example, want to play basketball, they can't afford whatever our fee is. They can't afford basketball shoes. We help them out.
But I understand that. I think that's what, we all understand that. It's a simple concept. I think we try our best to do that already. Why do we need to put this in this political structure, in this political environment? What do you mean by structural and institutional barriers? Barriers, I'm sorry. You know, that's like our institutions, that's part of critical race theory, that our institutions are racist. We have white supremacy. Yes, it is.
I'll give you a perfect example.
All right.
Is that and again, I'm only talking Rock Ridge. For example, for many years, in order for kids to get into advanced classes, you had to get and do well in certain classes. So it was very difficult for a kid to get into some higher order classes unless they had taken a certain sequence. Some of those courses we've learned over the years, they're not really necessary. So we might have a prerequisite to math class, a certain math class. I'll go with this one. You're in 6th grade. And in the 6th grade, we sort all the students. You're going into algebra, you're going into general math. Well, if you go into general math as a 6th grader and you follow the sequence, it is very difficult for you to be able to take higher order classes down the road. So is it really true that kids over here can't take this sequence of courses? What we've learned is it's not true. We have kids who we've been funneling over here, they could take the higher order classes. This is an example of institutionally setting something up that you don't need to do. So let the parents decide. Let the kids decide what courses they want to go into. If they want to take a class that's tougher, let them. If it's too tough, we just simply pull them back. But we don't need to prevent kids from taking classes because as an institution, we've determined you got to take this before you take this, before you take this. That's what that means.
You know, Noel, I agree with you in those general terms and in those general concepts, and I think just about anybody would. But those are the generalities of what school is all about and what we should be striving for anyway. And you said we shouldn't be into the politics of this, but this is a very political topic and area when you talk about diversity, inclusion, and equity. And that's very political. Tell us how you picked the members for this committee. How did you choose them? And do they belong to any social or political groups?
Some of them, yes.
Well,
Some of them were parents.
Do you have
Some of them were teachers.
do you have balance?
Some of them were school board members.
But do you have balance between
Some
different?
of them were kids.
Do you have balance between different ideologies in this
I don't
group?
pick committee members based on ideology.
Well, I think you did in this situation. But you know what? We're going to have a work session on this.
Thank you. Called for.
Well,
And we're going
we're
rough.
going to have a work study, so that's all I have to say.
Any other questions on the equity topic? No. All right,
Thanks.
next topic to fill the board in about. Athletic clubs. This is another one that caused a little stir here for the past couple of days. The message I want to deliver is that athletic clubs, they're all in place. We are not changing any athletic clubs for next year. There's nothing happening with the athletic clubs. I know there was a rumor going out there that we were changing athletic clubs and it was occurring quickly. That is not true. All the co-ops are in place, so when we get into the new high school, all the co-ops are still going to exist. That's all I want to say here tonight. They're all still going to exist. Any questions on that from board members?
So do you know where this was generated from?
Social media.
But social media was the conduit, but what was where was the topic generated?
Rumor. It was rumors.
And my understanding is it was just a simple question. I found out later it was a simple question of asking about numbers. So it was about numbers. And it escalated. That the school board was looking at discontinuing those co-ops.
I've got probably the same emails that you've got, so you must have gotten more information than.
Well, we also, as a school board, we all receive letters,
I just said that we all received certain ones of them.
certain letters that certain sports wanted to go it on their own. So people hear that and then the rumors start to fly, so.
Okay.
Okay, next one, Paris. This is.
This question's for Ms. Westby.
Sorry about that.
Okay, I had this for you. So there,
So it was just on the hire, we were gonna, remember we talked about hire.
All I was going to talk
Yeah.
about. So we are still looking for a hire on the Gilbert High School campus for another parent in the building. Just talked to Todd today. They're in it. They got some other additional para hires. They're still looking for that additional para.
Okay.
As I'm standing here right now. It's just like Bob Boss looking for bus drivers. We need more drivers. We can't find them. We need more paras. We can't find them. But we're still looking. So we will find one and then we'll hire that extra para.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to follow up on it and see where we were at with that.
Anything else on paras? Legislative update. As everyone knows, now in this one area, not in the student area here, legislative update on that. I have been down to the Capitol 3 times, talking about Rockridge's specific situation, because of the specific situation is, as everybody knows, Laurentian was built on budget, high school was built on budget, they were budgeted correctly, and then we had the delay starting on North Star because we couldn't move 550 kids anywhere. They had to be in a building, and then COVID hit, and then the inflation hit, and then $7 million later, that was the excess inflationary jump we had at North Star. So I am down to Capitol talking to individuals because we have a great reason for why we need assistance on this one to help close that gap. We do have the loan from the IRRR. We do have 2 other bills that were working their way through the politicians.
Can I ask why we're calling that a loan? I mean, it's not,
That's what the IRRR is calling it.
The resolution during that meeting was like to be paid back.
we don't have the authority to borrow. I mean, it's not,
No, but that's what they want to call it. They're the ones giving it, so they're calling it a loan.
Do we have a copy of, I know that this request from them falls under one of their funding programs. And I would think that even before they agreed to do it, that we would have filled out the request, just like a grant or something, and they would have thought about it and then said yes or no. But where's that document of what we asked for and then what they are actually giving? I think it should be in writing because there is some misunderstanding.
It's coming. The process they're using here is the exact same way, but in 2019, they also gave us like $96 million. The IRRR board said, yes, if you pass it. We passed it in both communities, and then we filled out the grant application and the paper for that. So I've talked to Roy Smith, who works down at the IRRR, who is our conduit via the schools, and we will shortly get their application process and their paperwork for that.
Right, I've talked to Roy too, and I think that's a real important thing, so everybody knows what they're agreeing to on both sides. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, policies. 6.1, policy changes, first reading. 6.1, no, we're gonna, vote on 6.1 first, right, Randy?
6.11.
6.11.
That's what I'm looking at, yep.
Okay, so that would be 2.2, policy 203, order of the regular school meeting. Can I get a motion to approve that?
I'll
First
make the
reading.
motion.
Motion by
Support.
Lotiger, support by Director Reardon. Any discussion?
Number 10 was stricken for unfinished business. Just a question of how are we going to take care of older unfinished business? It's part of our meetings and part of our job.
Contact the superintendent and ask the question.
Unfinished business.
Have to vote on business as business that we vote on. So how are we as a board going to take care of unfinished business? Like, for example, the resolution I brought up before, it's months and months old from even a different board, hasn't been consummated, so to speak, and carried out. About soliciting or posting and advertising for a commercial broker for the buildings that we have left. I know we have a organization that's interested and is making some kind of proposal, I guess, and then the city of Evelyn has got a consultant that will be shortly telling us what their work has been so far. But on top of that, we all agreed to market these for 2 years. So
Okay, any more?
how does that all fit in? We've got 2 or 3 agreements with the city of Evelyn. We had an agreement, then a first amendment, then a second amendment, changed things up a little bit. But, maybe I can ask some questions when they present.
Okay, so 6, any more discussion on 6 point, or 2 point,
Policy.
policy 203?
Yeah, I don't know if I got an answer of how the board is going to take care of unfinished business if it's not an agenda item.
The way I look at it, Polly, is as things progress on unfinished business, they're brought back to the board. Unlike if you table it, it has to come back at the next meeting. So as things progress and unfinished business, in a progression, they'll end up coming back to us.
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And I know other governmental entities, they have that as an agenda item. It's just kind of to keep track of the things that the actions that you've taken and that they're carried through. It's not just that the administration or the superintendent carries it through, so don't get me wrong. It's we remembering the decisions that we've made too, so. That's all I have to say.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
No.
Fail or passes 4 to 2. Item, or policy 206, public participation, school board meetings. Get a motion
Make a motion.
by Director Lotiger,
Support.
by Director Yuhan. Any discussion?
I'd like to, again, make an amendment to that motion that we eliminate time period, we eliminate the form. The guidelines are all incongruent and whatever. Let's just keep it plain and simple. If somebody wants to come and speak to the board, they come to the meeting and at least sign up. I would acquiesce to that. But some councils and things just say, I know the city of Evlith, anybody in the audience, come up to the podium. Do you want to address the city council? And then at the end, I think they do it twice. And other entities do it. Virginia.
That's how they do it, and we've heard how you want us to do it, but this is what we've said.
That's fine, but this is the discussion again,
Yep.
and I'm still advocating for it to be
Okay,
simple.
we know that.
We know that.
The thing that disturbs me most about this is that every time, and I'll pick on you just for general principle. You've been making these motions to change 206 and we change them. They go back to first reading. Then they come back to us again now and you want to make a change. And if the board votes for the change because they like like happened last meeting, she changed the and to or, goes back to first reading. And then we wonder why the public doesn't know which way is up with us about public speaking. We're still back in June of 2001, what our policy is, and we're breaking it all the time. Let's just get a policy and stand with it, and then if it doesn't work for the public, if we get an uproar, then we just make a change then. But let's get a policy because it was changed 3 times one year, and then now it's been sitting on the books for 18 months.
Okay, you said 2 things I need to respond to. First of all, you said I keep making amendments. My amendments have never been accepted. So these amendments came from the committee, and then they were brought to the board. I wanted amendments. They were never accepted. I fully expect that my amendment will fail, okay? So don't say that I keep bringing amendments and then it throws the whole thing off. And then Brandy, yeah, she changed an or, that was an improvement. So yes, it goes back to a first reading again. That's the way the process should work, okay? And then your other argument or your statement that this has gone through 3 changes and we're forever and it goes back to 2021. It went back to 2020 and even before, and it went back to the Evlith board because all of these changes still is confusing. And if you had stuck to the MSBA policy with no strings attached, that's why we're having this trouble. That's my personal opinion.
I would agree with you on that, but.
One at a time.
My turn. Part of the trouble is, Polly, is somebody emailed us on a totally different topic, and you brought up policy 206 to them and to come and talk at the meeting.
You do too. I tell everybody, if they have.
That wasn't even their issue, but you were asking them to come to the table.
You know what?
Come to the.
Don't make an accusation. You'll have to show me or tell me.
I'll show you the email. I mean, it was shared with all of us, so I can show you that email.
Do that.
That's part of the problem.
No, I'm not a problem because I tell people, and you did too, to say you have an issue or you have a whatever, come speak, and ask to speak under visitor input. I tell the public that all the time, and I think that's my.
A little further than doing that, though. But
well, I don't know what you're accusing me of. I don't know what she's accusing me of.
Oh, I saw the email.
Well, then show it to me.
Go ahead, Lisa.
I was just going to say, I think policy 206, we're not the only board that's dealing with that. I think there's many boards that are struggling with how to get it right because people do want to be heard. So I don't think that we're the only ones. It's multiple. Just to throw that in there.
Thank you.
Bill?
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry for picking on you on that, but every time we bring 206 up, you bring it up. And it's not your fault. I can agree with that. As far as other boards in the state, the Minneapolis Tribune did a huge article through the metro area on this subject, and boards are not changing away from 206. And I have a copy of that article. I thought I better not send that out, but I can make that available to any of the board members. The other thing is, the difference between us and the city is a governmental unit. They can tax, they can do a lot of things we can't do. That's why their policies are different than ours. And it's just like the IRRB. The IRRB, when they make a motion, they don't ask for a second. I mean, that is unusual for both of us and the city, but that's the way they structure things. Everybody structures things different. The Minnesota School Boards Association has rules, policies that you can adopt or change, and in this case, we're floundering on it. I just want to get it there so everybody knows what we can and can't do.
And you said, I'm saying, you said that they're not changing it. So why are we changing the MSBA policy? You said that article you referred to is saying that the.
Well, I'll send it to every board member tonight when I get home.
No, that's fine, but that article you said says that they're not changing their
A
policy.
majority, once again, rumor, it's like a rumor with the, and then I'll be done.
Yeah.
A rumor with us changing our sports. A rumor was going around that all these schools are changing their policy because of people and crowds want input. There is a time and a place for it, and they aren't radically changing it. That's what the article said.
Okay, you're going on a different road, but I was just saying changing the MSBA policy. That was my.
Yeah.
Tim, can I make a suggestion?
What?
That you send that.
All right, well, I'll send it
email
to.
Send it to?
Oh,
Well,
and he
then
can-
he can send out for open meeting law.
And that's just
possible
one
meeting
article
law.
of many. There's other articles that say different.
Yeah. That's right. So we got a motion by Director Lauer, support by Director Yuan for 206. All of those,
I made an amendment. Did I get a second?
I'll second it.
and that was to,
Change it right back to the MSBA policy, which eliminates a time period.
that's discretionary to the board chair.
Yeah, because the board has ultimate decision-making power anyway.
And then
No
didn't
form,
we go back to
no
that?
timetable.
We tried.
So that was it. It's MSBA, no timetable, no form, no official form, and whatever.
I think Tim wanted it to just go through and then start, right? Yeah.
That was
So we got-
eliminate all that.
So she wants to eliminate the letter, she wants to eliminate the contact to the superintendent, the 10
She wants to go
maximum
back.
people,
She wants to go to 206 as written by
and the
MSBA.
3-minute.
Right, just
Thing.
show up at the meeting and say you would like to speak. That's what
She would like to vote.
Yep.
I mean,
She got a
I think it
second
should
from
go.
Lisa. She got a second from Lisa, so we got to vote on Polly's motion first.
Discussion?
Any more discussion on Polly's amendment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, so policies, so back to 206. We had a motion by Director Lotiger, support by Director Yuhan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
You abstaining? Oh, so it's a 4-2. We will get it right. We will get it right. Okay, I promise you. Just give us,
I think we do have it right.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll get it. We'll get it. Right or wrong, I guess.
Sometimes it's bumpy.
It is.
Sure.
Number 7, administrative item 7.1, consider approval of grant naming rights between Cleveland Cliffs Foundation and Rockridge Public Schools, which will allow main commons of Rockridge High School to be named Cleveland Cliffs Commons in appreciation for the recognition of the $350,000 donation for purchasing
Educational.
additional equipment and machinery for the CT program. Can I get a
So moved.
by Director
I'll second.
Reardon, support by Director Westby? All those in favor, or any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, up next is 7.2, the Evelyn Special Area Plan. That would be the city of Evelyn, I do believe.
They are. I'm going to tell you why they're here first. The purpose of what they're here is that we have two school campuses, one in Gilbert and the other in Evelyn, that we are trying to figure out what to do with. And I know on the agenda, we're going to talk about the Gilbert campus and possibly there. If the Gilbert campus doesn't work with the Wolfhead group, what I heard from Evelyn, I think this is useful for the board, the audience, and the folks watching to pay attention to, because this is a great thing they're doing, because I know some of the properties, it's a different approach to looking at abandoned school buildings, how you might take a look at it. So this could be a way we want to look at doing this. And I know this came up earlier about, are we finding a realtor for the buildings? Well, there might be some things we can do that might help the process and make it easier for a realtor or a broker or a business person who is looking at maybe investing in the building. So I think this is really interesting to listen to what the city of Evelyn is looking at when they're looking at the school properties, which we own. You own them because you're the school board. However, because they're right in the middle of Evelyn and it's a big campus, there's a lot of space there, I think this is wise to take a look at this. And they're going to ask you maybe if you want to provide some financial assistance for them to start moving on this. You would get that back once the properties were sold. It's worth thinking about. You're not being asked to do anything, to decide anything, just simply listen to what the city of Evelyn is thinking.
Well, hi, school board members. I haven't seen you in a long time. I'm Jackie Monahan Junick from City Hall, and I'd like to introduce Bob Streeter from Streeter Consulting. Bob has worked with the Evelyn City Council and staff to prepare this Evelyn Special Area Plan. He'd like to explain it to you.
Can you go over to the podium, please?
Yeah, there you
Thank you. Thank you.
You're on TV.
Yeah,
Oh, hi, TV. And take any questions you have. So we appreciate your time tonight.
yeah.
So let Bob come over and talk. Thank you.
Oh, you got the easy job.
I got these.
It's the right one, Mike? Yep.
Yep.
Well, good evening. I'm happy to be here to talk to you about Evelyn's approach to repurposing the school site in the center of the city. My name is Bob Streeter. For the last year, I've been working primarily with Greater Minnesota cities on a variety of community, economic development, planning, redevelopment issues. Prior to that, I spent 25 years working for cities doing exactly this kind of work. So what you're going to see tonight is a brief presentation. It's the same presentation that the Evelyn City Council saw, I think, maybe about a month ago. So you recognize the site. The site's centrally located in the center of Evelyn, 10 to 15-minute walk from anywhere in the city. The site's kind of broken down into a number of different parts, a number of different acreages, both buildings and fields. And there's been, I understand, 2 demolitions since that time. So why is this important now for Evelyn? Well, a couple of things. We know in the next 2 years, this is going to be vacated, and there's going to be 21 acres with almost 500,000 square feet of building unoccupied. Secondly, there is no active planning for what this campus ought to become in the future. Thirdly, it represents a very significant opportunity for the city of Evelyn to figure out what this new place can become in their city. So one of the things that the city council can do to prepare for the turning or the reuse and redevelopment of this property is undertake what's called a special area plan. A special area plan is a planning tool. It's been around 100 years, and it's an action-oriented decision-making process with a specific outcome. It's just not talking and studying. It should end in a specific deliverable. And generally, it's used for areas that are large, complex, similar to the school site. So I'm going to talk about the 4 phases of the process. There are 4 phases. The first phase is gathering background information, and I'm going to be going into a little more detail on each of these. The second phase is develop a vision and goals for what this property is going to become. The third step is to prepare reuse or redevelopment alternatives and evaluate them financially. And the last step is then to choose an alternative and implement that particular plan. So the first step in the process is very similar to what any developer builder is going to do on the site. The whole idea here is to understand what the market demand is for real estate and to understand what the opportunities and constraints with the physical site are themselves. So you can see a list of examples of tasks that are done. There's a market study. We have to understand if there's clear title. We have to understand the building structural and reuse analysis. We have to look at potential funding sources to do the work. The second phase is to establish a vision and goals, high level of what this area is going to become. And that requires gathering input from the community, citizens, key stakeholders, and gather input about what this area could become. However, it's informed with information from phase one. Oftentimes, maybe you've been part of a group that talks about what could be, but it's not grounded in market or financial reality. So step two is setting the vision and goals, but it's those vision and goals are grounded in the information from step one or phase one. The last thing I'll say is the vision and goal statement then are used to prepare alternatives. So the alternatives that are prepared have to reflect the phase one findings as well as the vision and goal statements from phase two. So phase three, what the deliverable is, there are 2 to 3 reuse redevelopment concepts to look at. It could be a variety of different uses and circulation patterns, both auto and pedestrian park. And these concepts are evaluated against the market demand and the physical opportunities and constraints, as well as financial feasibility. Can it be constructed? Can it be constructed profitably? And the last item, task in phase three, is for the city council to decide which alternative or combination of alternatives is preferred. Do they prefer? Does the community prefer? The last step then is to take all of the actions necessary to put the plan into effect. And a lot of times that's regulatory. That's the comprehensive plan, that zoning and subdivision, could be platting and site plan, could be preparing a grading plan. But you see the last two are prepare developer builder solicitation and solicit interest. Now there is something to solicit to the developer builder community. Oftentimes, and I think it's been the case so far, that folks will hire a broker or a real estate agent. And that assumes the problem is nobody knows about the opportunity. The issue is there is an opportunity, but it's so fraught with financial risk and uncertainty that people really aren't going to spend the time and money to investigate and see if there could be a profitable project undertaken. So what's the role of the council in this process? They authorize the planning process, they set expectations for participation, and they make key decisions at specific points during the process. Also, there's an advisory committee, and the school district is going to be asked to be a participant in this advisory committee. But their role is to make sure that key stakeholders are consulted in the planning process. They also provide the council with input on issues, goals, and plan alternatives. As I've said so many times, the council decides, everybody else advises. The role of the community and the neighbors is similar, especially those who live adjacent to the site. If I owned a home, I'd want to make sure that I knew what was going to be going on across the street from my house. So they also get to participate in identifying issues, goals, and evaluating plan alternatives. So how long does this take? It typically takes between 9 and 18 months. The first part, phase one, that's usually 40% of the time. That's a fair amount of engineering analysis. That's more of the technical side. So this is the really important slide. So what's the benefit of doing this? Why not just hire a realtor or get a broker? Number one, there's too much uncertainty and risk for any developer to spend any time to evaluate what could possibly be done with 21 acres and 500,000 square feet of building. All of the tasks that I listed in phase one, a developer has to do before they make a decision whether or not they're going to move along with the project. So this process provides information that reduces the extraordinary development uncertainty and risk and cost for the developer. I've worked with a lot of developers over the time, and some from large firms and some from small, but they all tell me one thing. Developers are not in the role primarily of making a profit. They are in the role of managing risk. If they manage risk, then they're profitable. So with all of these unknowns, it's just too much uncertainty and too much risk. Secondly, this process lays a foundation that provides the developer builder with information so they can appropriately evaluate the opportunity. There are too many opportunities in the development world that developers can pick from. They're not going to spend 12 months on a site like this when they can go to other areas and in 30 days evaluate any number of opportunities that are in a higher state of readiness. The third element is you're going to attract higher quality developers and investors, and you're going to spend less time evaluating proposals from parties that are unlikely or able to perform financially or to pull the project together. The second to the last element is it puts the city, which is a partner in this project, in an informed position to better evaluate proposals. There's nothing that represents a greater risk to a city than having to negotiate with the developer when they have all the information and the elected body has none. So it's really hard to evaluate the opportunity. You don't know, you may not understand what they're telling you or how it relates to the property. And the last one is it expedites the increase in new tax base due to reuse and redevelopment. This process greatly increases the probability that the property is going to be reused or redeveloped in a shorter period of time. So let me just give you a couple of examples that are underway right now. Chisholm, Hibbing, the city of Oakdale, and Columbia Heights, these are all examples that are undertaken that I'm working on right now. So Chisholm has 32 acres on the west side of town. They've been going through this process for about 9 months. I can tell you right now, they wanted to develop 32 acres into a residential subdivision, but it's wilderness and there's a ton of bedrock. So we had to do some investigation first to figure out what the opportunities and constraints of the site were. So right now, on March 8th, the city council in Chisholm is going to get a concept plan, a development plan for 61 lots through that area with trails and a small park. And then that will attract development interest because we all know builders aren't going to buy 32 acres of land and start building houses. It's too risky. Another example is in the city of Hibbing, Hill, what it's called. It's 70 acres right off 169. The city owns about 6 or 7 parcels there, and they engaged me to put together a small area plan for owner-occupied and multifamily housing development, which includes an 8-acre contiguous park. So we're going to put all that together. We do cost estimates, a variety of technical analysis that then we put together into an RFQ or an RFP, and that goes out to builders in the area. Now they've got something to market and something to evaluate. Just by comparison, this is an example in Oakdale, Minnesota. This was at the 180,000 square foot mall on 694. It's a third of the size of the Evelyn campus. And that mall was kind of in a wash. You couldn't really see it from the freeway. But what happened was we went through the small area planning process and we were able to attract, you'll see the white roof, that's a 92,000 square foot Hy-Vee grocery store. To the left is 93 units of senior housing. Up to the left is a gas station and a coffee shop, and then you have a Hardee's north of there. That would not have happened if we said to the developer, see what you can do. Just to tear that building down was $350,000. We had to regrade the site and bring it up 6 feet. So there were a lot of things that had to be fixed. There were a ton of title issues that had to be fixed. So doing the small area planning process allowed Hy-Vee to come in and go, Oakdale's ready to go. That was the first Hy-Vee grocery store in the state of Minnesota. And the last example that I'll give you, and then I'm happy to answer any questions, I've got one other slide. This was a 30-acre industrial park, heavy, dirty industrial park in Columbia Heights, Minnesota. And many vacant buildings, a lot of contamination. In fact, we took out 8,200 semi-trucks of contamination over 5 years. We did a small area plan, and this is what it looks like a few years ago. Over 500 units of housing. You have some senior housing. You've got townhomes. You've got some single family. We redid the park. We changed the circulation in the road system. And Ryland, which was a national home builder, they're now another company, they came in and said that was their #1 site in the United States because we were ready to go and we were 10 minutes from downtown Minneapolis. So this would have, if I would have said to a developer, we own all that, see what you can do, they'd have never done it. It was $12 million just to remove the contamination. So it was too much risk, too much uncertainty, and too much cost. So that is the purpose of the small area planning process, and those are examples of what can be accomplished. So generally, the process costs between $90,000 and $250,000. So that number's high. That's exactly what a developer would have to pay to get to the same end. And they're never going to spend that amount of money because they never know if what the market is, what the site opportunities and constraints are, and they don't understand the local political environment. They're going to go through all that work and find out they're going to get a big fat no. So that's the risk you're asking a developer to take, and they're not going to do it because there are too many other places they can take that money. And just something that I think will help is oftentimes a builder developer can go to a bank and get a loan for a 75% of the cost of the building. On land development, maybe 50%. But on these pre-development costs, they can't get a loan from a bank because there's no security. They have nothing to lien. So this money has to come right out of the developer's pocket or their friend's pocket. And you can only do this so many times, but that's a lot of money. So potential sources, a potential contribution potentially from the school district. The IRRB provides $25,000 annually, and the city's applied for that. The city of Evelyn is putting in money, and then I'll talk about it again. But in every project I've been involved in, when the city fronts this money, when the land sells, they repay themselves for those costs. So the city is requesting 4 things. One is a $50,000 contribution to assist with planning. 2, that the school's contribution or potential contribution and the city's contribution would be repaid from the land sale proceeds. 3, there needs to be some clarification in the current agreement to do 2 things, to make sure that all the properties are covered and that the city has time to plan. And the last request is that we have some representation of the elected body here on the advisory committee. I think that's the last one. So that's a lot to absorb. I hope you had time to look at this prior to this presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very good.
Yeah, that's a decent plan.
I have a
Question. The slide said cost was 190 to 250. I think you said 90 to 250.
I made a mistake.
You meant there or there?
It's 190 to
Okay,
250.
yeah.
That's right, I was wrong.
All right.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions. Say on page 9 and page 12, we're talking about the council's role and the council's decision-making power.
Yeah.
Well, the council chooses a preferred alternative for further analysis and refinement. And then the council on page 12 authorizes process, sets expectations, makes key decisions at specific points. The problem is this is, it's a partnership, but the property belongs to the school district. So those decisions are to be made by the school district.
Absolutely, and that right in the beginning, you heard me say I gave this to the Evelyn City Council.
Okay.
But I wanted you to see exactly what they saw.
Okay.
But we understand that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And because that leads to some of the agreements we already have. I think one of your last ones say that the current agreement would have to be adjusted. Is that on one of your last slides?
Yes, there are, I think it is the last slide. Yes.
The very last one?
So right now, the agreements cover
Clarify.
all of the properties except the one for which the city has a purchase agreement, and I think that was the old junior high school. The Manual Arts Building isn't covered under the PA or under the existing agreement.
So that's the addition.
Correct. Number two, we just want adequate time to complete the plan, and so that takes 9 to 18 months. In fact, we're kicking it off as we speak. We met today, and phase one will start, and phase one should be done around 15th of May.
Okay. And then when you get to the phase 3 here, what I'm looking at. So if you're going to prepare, you're going to take say we want at least 2 to 3 ideas, development, reuse projects.
Right.
Okay, and that's going to be, well, I think you give examples of all kinds of things on the previous page. Parks, trails, open, maybe some not residential, but maybe some apartment complexes or stuff. So what if, as you go through these phases and you get to phase 4, and there's a developer or something that has an idea that isn't chosen or isn't one of your 2, 3, maybe you'll get 4, 5, or 6, right? Are those ideas from developers going to be not considered just because it didn't go, it wasn't identified in a process such as this?
One of the things that we're thinking about doing is forming what's called a technical advisory committee, and we may reach out to developer builders. This process is exactly what a developer would do, and then they'd sell to a builder.
No, I understand that totally. This is doing a lot of work for any developer. I totally get that.
Yes.
I totally get that. Either we do it and it's more attractive to them, and then they would add their own or what, and they don't have to do it. I totally get that. But if there's, something else, I just want to make sure that another idea from somebody who follows this process and has a different idea that was not identified, that would not be ruled out.
Everybody gets to say whatever they want. Everybody, their suggestion gets answered, and it'll be evaluated like everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, a developer comes in with a different idea than the community and the committees identified. The other thing is we've got the agreements with the cities, and you mentioned one of them that has to be added to. But there are other ones, especially the right of first refusal, and there's a lot of talk about demolition. And some of the whereases in these agreements say the school district desires to demolish these buildings, and then the city has options. And so I'm wondering what role demolition may or may not play in, especially, and you've got these divided into 5 sections. Maybe some of these, I would not want to see any of them demolished, because the ones that were probably in the least best condition, I don't want to say worst condition or bad condition, are already gone. And so I am hoping that, and I would do everything that I could to make sure that none of those 5 categories includes demolition. And is that an option?
Everything's on the table.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. Yeah.
I think it's a great plan. I think it's exactly what the city needs. I think, I'd love to be part of the advisory committee. I live 2 blocks from there. So I think it's exactly the wide open scope that needs to be taken. I think you've heard it be said before at this table, there hasn't been a new house built in Evelyn in 20 years outside of West Evelyn. I think it's desperately what Evelyn needs. So yeah, I think it's a great start.
It is a good start. I just had some questions and some concerns. It's a great.
I wasn't saying anything what you're saying. I'm just giving my opinion.
Okay, great.
And just to clarify, my role is not to say, here's what should be done. I'm just facilitating a process.
Yep.
The community can decide what it wants to do. Well, thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
You.
Very good.
Okay, 7.3, consider approval of MOU between Wolf's Head Discovery and Rockridge Public Schools. Well, were we gonna have something come forward to it with us on 7.2 in regards to the $50 amendment to that plan in the future, or what are we gonna do?
My suggestion would be, this would be another work study.
Okay, all right, can you add,
That we would pick up at the next board meeting.
add that to
So the
the,
list is slowly getting
in longer, yep,
longer.
Well, unless you want to give the 50,000.
then I'd, yeah,
Who is it, Gilbert? Magic, you would.
Yeah.
if it's good, right away.
Oh, you guys are terrible.
All right,
So related to that, it is a little bit tangentially related, is the Gilbert campus. I've been involved in 4 meetings with this group of individuals. This is the most extensive level of discussions we've had with any group. They are officially proposing an MOU. You have that in front of you. The MOU is for 6 months. I have run it through our local attorney, John Colosimo, and I'm reiterating his words here. The biggest thing he is letting us know is that the school board is not in the business of economic development. That is not what we do. The cities do economic development. So that's why in that MOU several times you will literally see those words. The school board, school district is not in the business of economic development. So, however, the reason why they want the MOU is so they can start looking for exactly what you just heard. Starting the process, can they afford to do it? Is it gonna work? What would they, how much would rehab cost? But they don't wanna just start that unless they have some agreement with you that you're okay with this.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want me to say any more, so I'm just gonna stop right here and let you ask questions or talk amongst yourself as far as how you would like to handle this.
so
Looking for 6 months.
6 months, so that we would, if we agree to this tonight, in 6 months, if they can't get their funding and stuff together or whatever, then the building goes up for sale or whatever.
And the MOU is over.
Okay, and then, okay,
And then they also, there's a 20-day in there that either party can opt out with the request of 20 days' notice.
So if in 6 months they decide that they can't or don't want to be involved or can go through with the project, we've just lost 6 months of marketing. And so why can't we just have have it open to anyone? Because any developer, just like this Wolfhead, any developer is going to have to make those decisions too. But we're reserving 6 months for them to do it before we even allow any other interest from other developers?
I think we would, if they don't do nothing in 6 months, we hire this guy over here to market the Gilbert.
I know, but that's what I'm thinking, that at this point in time,
I think, I mean, I think,
Gilbert too.
I think the plan, I mean, to hire a realtor is what this is what I mean, we ain't got people beating down the door to buy our buildings, but
People
this
don't know about
gentleman over here who's going to make a plan for the city of Evelyn, I mean, yeah, I get all that, that's a great opportunity, you know?
I think what the gentleman just said to us loud and clear is developers don't get, it's not that they don't get, they have a tendency to get into a plan that they're proposing rather than jump in and do everything from the beginning on.
All themselves.
Right.
Yeah, all by themselves. So if they see that a community or someone is putting some effort into it and the community's behind it,
Because it's too much risk.
yeah.
Yeah.
oh, that's always helpful, I understand that.
And have we heard from the city of Gilbert on their plan at all? I mean, have they waited on their opinion?
Director Addy, do you want to
Well,
tell them what we know?
what we know is that this group here is interested in it.
Yeah.
I think I called the mayor and I, you know, I mean, there's not a whole lot of support for it, for them. I mean, there's support, but it's not like they're jumping up and down hoping that, you know, that they'll just, in 1 year, there'll be cars parked up there in traffic. And I mean, it's this group here, it's not far-fetched, I get it. It's just, that it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. In my opinion, I hope this group the best, that they can find the financing. That's my opinion.
The city, I don't want to speak again for the city of Gilbert, just like you heard me, I don't want to speak for the city of Mount last time. They're trying to figure out what to do. They're just in the early stages, they're trying to figure out, and I think if you talk in a work study session about it, start this process, you may decide to start a process like this on the Gilbert building, regardless of what you decide to do with this MOU, because you can do the MOU and you can still start another process on the building to make it easier for someone to take a look at the site down the road, to give them information.
Go ahead, Tim.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the MOU. Wolfhead.
And I will support it.
And are we talking, now we're in the discussion phase, are we talking about all the land? Yeah, we have in Gilbert there, is that all encompassing the whole?
No, it's the element, go ahead, Noel.
It's basically the Nelshin site. It's the junior high school site. Everything behind it and the athletic fields does not include the bus garage and does not include across the street, it's called where the old shirt factory, Property Street, does not include that site.
Or the tennis courts.
Or the tennis courts.
Or the parking lot across from the elementary.
And we own only half of that parking lot we recently.
Yeah, so that one would still be available for the individual that would like a right of way.
Correct, and we're working with the city of Gilbert through that, and I believe at some point you'll have something coming before the board to consider.
Okay.
And I would, it would be nice that, you got a motion by Director and support by Director Addy. I would, just in the discussion phase of this, I would like to say that I would, maybe consider hiring Mr. Streeter to maybe, address the board, or, they'd basically to come and address the city of Gilbert on how you are addressing the city of Evelyn. Or how would we do that? As far as, you went right to the city, he went right to the city of Evelyn, right? Okay. All right. Okay.
I have a question.
I don't know how to do that.
Let's see how this
plans. Work study session and then go from there.
Add that to it.
Yeah. So.
Like a grocery list pretty soon.
Yep.
Point of question is, so are they saying that they cannot go ahead and do their due diligence, see if it's viable for them and their funding unless we give them 6 months, kind of a exclusivity thing for 6 months?
I believe that's correct.
That's what they're saying.
Why can't they go do it like any other developer could?
They're not a developer.
I know.
They're because they're a nonprofit. They have a nonprofit. They're going to set up some more. In the world of grants, this is what they're telling us, and I believe this is true. When you apply for grants, and they are going to apply for grants, that's what they clearly told us, they need a location. They need a site that will improve the viability of whoever is making the decision on whether they will get the grant or not. That's why they want to do the MOU. They want to be able to say, we have a potential site, now let's look and see if we can get some funding. It makes it easier for them.
That's the same catch-22 as the other. It's like they're not going to give a grant if you don't, have a purchase agreement and vice versa. It's the same.
That gets them time to get their people, they wanted people to come in. Is that what the discussion was? They wanted people to come in, look at the building.
Find viability.
Yeah, how much it's going to cost to do this and how much the boiler's going to cost and electrical and bring everything up to code and and it gives them that window of opportunity. They find out it's going to cost too much, they're out.
I know, but why can they not do that without the 6-month exclusivity clause?
Mr. Streeter wants to speak on behalf of.
Shed some light.
The idea of an MOU, on the city side, we call it a preliminary development agreement. The reason they're asking for it is they're going to spend time and money. If they don't have it, They could literally spend $30,000 and the next day the board says, I've got 2 other developers, why don't you take a shot at it? Now you've got 3 people that are spending time and money and they don't have, there's no chance that their ideas are ever going to come to fruition. So that's why they're asking for it, and this is what you're running into. So you have to sort of pick somebody, if you want to go this route, and give them time to see if there's a deal and bring it back to you, as opposed to leaving it wide open, because that's why no developer is going to just start spending time and money unless they know they've got a reasonable chance and time to try to see if there's a deal.
Right, and this basically is giving them first choice to do that.
Yes, well,
It is.
if I could say this, that's why in a process like this in cities, before cities may do this, they'll maybe talk to a number of different developers and say, what's your experience? What are your qualifications? And what's your track history? And then they'll pick the one that has the greatest likelihood or maybe greatest experience and therefore the greatest likelihood to be successful. Cities typically don't just pick the first that walks in the door.
But that's what's happened here. And I like that idea to vet out other developers to see which one is most likely, most viable. But we have one that came to us.
We showed it a bunch of different times and didn't have anybody that was interested.
Where did you show it? In the newspaper?
Oh, there's people that walk through the building.
I'm getting back to a professional commercial broker. That's my whole thing. I have one more question here. And goal 3, business case justification for adequate funding is going to be determined by Wolfhead? I mean, isn't that, even Matt talked about, there are buildings, aren't we going to decide what's a viable project or not? And in here, if I understand it right, goal 3 is that because the school's not in the business of economic development, the business case justification for adequate funding will be determined by Wolfhead. So, go ahead,
And
vote.
the reason why that is that you are not in the business of economic development. This isn't our job. If they can't make it financially work, of course they're going to walk away. Of course they're going to say no.
Listen,
We can't hold someone to Director Sorkin, we can't hold someone to an agreement. If they don't have the money, they don't have the revenue, no matter how desperately want them to buy the building, if they can't make it financially work, we're not going to hold them to it.
I'm not saying we hold them to that. I'm saying who decides adequate funding. In the other cases, it was the school district that determined viability by the 6-point viability criteria that the city, okay? We determine adequate funding and viability, not them. If they say, oh yeah, we think we have enough money, no, shouldn't they have to have the same criteria to prove that they have the funding and that they're going to get the grants and whatever they're going for? So I'm saying that doesn't make sense. It's like
I believe the agreements between Evelyn and this they're different. We're kind of backdooring our way into this where Evelyn has key to the front door on all the processes.
Okay. I don't think you're even understanding what I'm saying, so let's just vote.
I do. Okay, we got a motion by Director Reardon, support by Director Addy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That says 5-1 vote. Okay, 7.4, consider approval of Rock Ridge Community Education rental prices. I'm sorry.
Thanks for your patience.
Yeah, thanks for your patience.
That's just fine. Good evening. So we started this process last fall. We started by contacting other school districts, looking at what they charge for rental prices, looking at similar fields, similar facilities. We took a look at our old prices that we were charging that were quite a bit lower than what we've come up with on this. Came up with a price tier for nonprofit organizations and a price tier for profit organizations. This is a draft, and this is why it's coming to you guys for approval and for feedback.
So did you base some of these or look at, like, say, Masabi East and other areas on what they're charging and kind of get an idea?
Numbers right off the top of my head, but we were within $10 to $15 of Masabi East and Mountain Iron. Of ESCO, Superior, all have turf fields, all rent them out. You look on there, there's a section for lighting costs where if they need lights, it's $75 for the first hour, and then I think $25 for the.
After.
That. There's stipulations in there for extra charges for custodial, if we have to bring in a custodian to work on a date where they're renting the facilities. Let's say they're renting the Heart Space in Laurentian for a birthday party on a Sunday. Well, that's gonna be an extra $40 an hour to cover the cost of a custodian to come in on a Sunday and work that prices.
Okay.
So we did a lot of research on it and came up with different prices for different spaces.
Do those custodial fees take into consideration, they might get paid overtime, time and a half or double time? That's where you got those fees?
That's where we got that. That's why I said $40 and not something a little bit lower.
Have we had anybody reach out to start renting them or any of these?
Absolutely. I'm taking phone calls once or twice a week right now and just saying we're not ready to start committing to rental, but I'll get back to you when we do.
Great.
Good.
Good.
So 7.4, can I get a motion to approve the rental prices?
I make that motion.
Or
By Director Yuhan, by more discussion?
Sorry, I tried to be quiet over in the corner. There's just a couple of things that I was thinking with the auditorium that should maybe take a little bit closer of a look. Sorry to interject, but you know, it's something that I do with the district is, you know, the AV work in the auditorium. You know, our auditorium, the new one, is state of the art, and we have to, there's gonna be times where we have to have someone in, you know, controlling the lights and the sound, and that's something that I think should be added in there if someone.
And this
needs
is
that.
all discussion. We've had a discussion with different groups, administrative, about hiring a tech manager for the auditorium. And if we did that, then those fees would all be going in, because no, we don't want the average person coming off the street and operating any of that sound lighting board equipment in there. So that's all stuff that we are
Okay, yeah, I was
taking
just
into
wanting to make sure that
consideration.
that was something that should be, you know, added on to that, is that,
Yeah,
because, you know, there are some places, that come with their own sound people, and they shouldn't be charged, you know, the sound and light fee, but the people who come without it, they definitely should. And another thought would be like if someone came in and like, let's say they held a comedy show and it had, you know, $500,000 ticket gates, should we be getting percentage of the ticket gate too? You know? Just a couple thoughts that I had about it anyway. And again, sorry to interject, I know.
Yeah. No,
That's
good.
good.
Okay.
Good
That's
point.
good.
That's good.
So-
We would amend this one.
I would-
We would amend this one to add those things that,
To the, I would, there's motion by Director Yuhan, support by Director Lotiger. Would you amend your,
Well, you said it's already built in with that
I think so.
It's
hourly
not.
rate?
not yet.
Not
yeah,
yet
so we-
Okay.
in here,
I
so.
misunderstood.
Let's just pass this and we can come back and add that at a later date when it's figured out more closely.
okay, so do you want to add that to the working session
Well,
to talk about it, or would you work with Noel to come up with that rate?
I wanted to come up with the addendum to it for the
there you go.
Okay,
manager.
Everything but the auditorium then.
right.
Okay.
Everything but the auditorium. Anything else,
Sounds
Daniel, that might be in question?
So I want to just clarify, so we're going to vote on this, but we're going to take out the fees of the auditorium? Is that what
That's correct.
you're saying?
That's not what I was saying. I think we're talking about a lighting tech, or sound lighting tech down the road, then we'd add that fee on an addendum. I'm fine with it as it's
Right.
presented.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would be too, so,
just change it at a later date.
for the lighting and
Okay,
fees for,
Any-
yeah.
any more discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 7.5, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's still him.
Oh,
Not get rid of that easy.
hey, oh, that's the fencing, all right.
Now that we passed that, he wants some money.
So the baseball and softball field dugouts were all constructed by students. And in order to do that, they were not able to put any safety fencing in front of the dugouts that we need there. The safety fencing is all something that needs to be added after the fact. We did go out, we got 3 bids from different companies on putting safety fencing in front of all 8 dugouts. The Iron Oaks Fencing Company came in at the lowest bid. That gives us what they want, matching the black chain link style that's already on the follow line fences and the backdrop. So it'll look like it belongs, and we would like the approval to let Iron Oaks Fencing know that they can start this construction as soon as
The frost goes out.
possible.
I'll make that motion.
I second it.
Yeah.
And it is a time thing. They will finish all 8 ones as tugouts are completed.
We got a motion by Director Yuan, support by Director Westby. Any discussion?
I just have a question. I just know that black fencing is way more expensive than, and just so it fits in or whatever, is it really necessary for that extra expense?
You can see it.
Well, you don't want something down there that's gonna stand out like an eyesore, and it is a little bit more pricey, and I didn't get them to do a price cost analysis with the standard galvanized fencing. This price quote did come in, something like $10,000 below what Peterson gave us, and Peterson is the company that installed the original fencing. I really don't think that we want to go with something galvanized or different down there. I think we want to stay with that black powder coat look.
I agree.
Okay. More questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 10.6, consider approval of draft for letter of intent.
So a letter of intent is something that we'd like to use for our coaches at the end of the season to see if they're returning. They're an at-will, they're a single-year contract, and it would just make keeping track of our hires a lot more
Efficient.
consistent. So at the end of the season, we'd send a letter out to our coaches, do you intend to return? They send it back, yes or no. If they don't send it back within 2 weeks, we consider that a no, and we post the position. It just doesn't hold them to the position. It doesn't hold us to offering them the position. It just lets us know that, yes, they'd like to return.
I'll make the motion.
Support Director Lotiger, by Director Westby. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Just want to make sure.
Thank you.
You are voting, right, Polly? You did say?
I said aye.
Okay, I didn't hear you.
Unless you hear me say no, it's an
Okay,
aye.
all right.
I'm the furthest away from you almost.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
7.7, consider submitting letters of support to both Rebuilding American Infrastructure Sustainability for the highway system out in front.
Members of the board, in short, this has to do with the rebuilding of Highway 53 plus some trails to get from Evelyn and from Midway to Laurentian and the high school. They are continuing to apply for grants, federal and state. They would like your letter saying, we agree with this, we think this is a great project. So what you have in front of you are 2 letters that they are requesting that we sign and send in to help them receive the highway dollars grants. That's it in a nutshell.
I make the motion.
Got a motion by
Support.
Yuhan. Support by Director Reardon. Any other discussion?
I'm just figuring out now how much, what you have on the website now is the cost of all of these in millions. And, wait, no. So it's over 34 million, and it's going to have to be, we don't know the impact on our taxpayers on this. And I don't know that going blindly into it, there's going to be county, there's going to be state, there's going to be federal, there'll probably be school and city tax increases. We don't know the impact, the cost impact of this.
I'd rather save lives.
Yeah.
Save lives.
Yeah, because it's
For access to the school.
It is, but it's for redoing the highway as well.
Well,
So it's making those intersections safer.
And the bridges by
And that's-
Gilbert are for safety because.
And that's been a concern that people have brought up.
Not everybody supports the J's and the turnabouts and the business part of it either. So let's vote. I just can't support it because I don't know the ramifications of it.
Yeah.
It's not that it's a bad idea, the ramifications are unknown.
Slow traffic down a little bit and
So the lights don't do it as,
out here.
yeah.
Well, the turn lanes are too short. The speed is too fast. okay, to get in. It adds more access to our school.
That's without the high school traffic.
That's not the high school traffic.
Yeah.
Okay. It replaces a couple bridges that don't meet the height requirements right now. But that's not, they're not replacing the bridges because of us.
This had come up before the school was even built, that this was gonna be a problem to get.
Yeah, and not everybody, well, there's controversy too about the roundabouts for big semis and things, and
Popping up all over the.
controversial when it was.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
No, I know, but
Go up, you go down not Martin Road, what is it, the road that goes from Midway Road? I mean, there's
Yeah, there's a couple
two,
there.
one on 194, one on Maple Grove.
There's one in Cloquet.
Yeah.
That's,
I'm gonna get killed on that one of these days.
Well, don't go so fast around it. It's 20.
Well, no, I just kinda get, I'm used to going straight, and then all of a sudden that circle's there.
I mean, it's there, there's one on highway, I mean, they're everywhere. I mean, and it's just, they're,
I think we need one here.
Yep.
Because the traffic is coming back down from the elementary. One person trying to turn into the high school blacks up all the traffic going up to the elementary. I honestly think we need one on our road here. It's on my wish list.
We're talking.
Have a motion?
Wish list. That will come back to the board also, that topic.
Okay.
okay, 7.7.
This.
Yeah.
7 points. We have a motion.
we have a
support.
motion and
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
and I'll be a no.
That's a
4-1 and 1.
4, 1, and 1.
Abstention.
Okay, 7.8, consider purchase wall mats for the multi-purpose room, wrestling room.
Members of the school board, you actually have approved this once. It's coming back. It's a boomerang. And the reason that's coming back is because the state of Minnesota, we happen to live in the one state where you have to have a special kind of wall mat. In the wrestling, we're talking about the mats that would be on a vertical wall here. The ones you approved, we can't use. Because there's only one company in the state of Minnesota that builds these mats that according to the fire retardance level that is required by the state of Minnesota, you have 2 bids there. I've talked to Dennis about this a lot, the wrestling coach. So this is the only company that we can buy these from, and the cost, it went from $8,000 to $38,000.
And we're the only state that requires fireproof wall mats?
Monopoly to me.
Only state that requires these special kind of mats. And so very few, only one company actually builds them. So I'm bringing it back to you so you know what's happening. We're in a bind. We need these mats.
Hey,
Would that come out of general fund or soft costs in the bonding?
No, not in the bonding. We would probably take this out of capital probably because of the cost involved.
Okay.
okay,
And we didn't buy those other mats yet?
they're taking them back,
They're getting sent back.
Oh, they are taking them back for full.
and they're sending them back, yeah.
Well, good.
They should have known that they shouldn't,
They should have known that they couldn't
sell them to us.
Yeah.
That's why they're taking them back. So can I get a motion to?
I make a motion.
Motion by Director Westby, support by Director Lotiger. Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. 7.9, consider approval of 2023 board committees. Need a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Director Reardon, support by Director Yuhan. Any discussion?
I make an amendment that the budget committee be a committee of the whole, number 1. Budget and finance. I think we all need to know that information and learn as much as we can to make our good financial decisions. And if it's not a committee of the whole, they can just all be working sessions. It wouldn't matter. So I'll make that first amendment.
Well, what other ones are there?
Well, I've asked to be the Evelyn City Council liaison because as I said in my letter to you, Bill, that I believe at this point in time I have a good working relationship with the council. And
I believe John signed on right away that night.
well, that's okay. It's not first come, first served. Really shouldn't be.
Okay.
Because I think we all should have been considered once everybody got their thing on. Because I could have jumped mine in first too, but that would be my other.
I mean, I respect all that, Polly. I respect all that. What else are you looking for?
Well, I'll just make a comment on this one. The negotiations team, as I said in my email to you, Tim and I have years and the most experience with negotiating and all the different parts of it, and the 403Bs and the medical and all of that stuff. And so out of three negotiating committees, I was given one half, you were given 1.5, and Tim and John were both given all three committees.
The 1.5 that you see there, the half, that's because we still had ongoing negotiations with the administration.
Well, we don't know.
We don't know.
Okay. So
Okay.
would you replace yourself, your administration, Bill Addy, with me for the teachers and the administration?
Correct.
Okay. So then that gives me,
Okay.
another 5. So that gives me 1.0,
Right.
you 1.0, and John and Tim 3. And again, with all of my years of experience there, I believe I'd be an asset to that. Nothing against you, John, but I don't know that you've had experience negotiating.
He's got to get experience. He's going to be on the board for 4 years. I
Yeah,
believe it's
I know,
pretty
but
key.
you want the best, not that he's
Are
not
you
the best.
talking on negotiations for AFSMI?
No, she's
Or
talking
just
about
teachers?
City council liaison.
Okay.
I'm talking about AFSMI.
No, she's talking
Talking about
negotiations.
AFSMI and then administration and teachers negotiation.
I thought you were talking city council.
I did before. We moved on to something else. And then Tim has all 3. John has all 3. Bill, you have 1, and now I have 1.
So I have 1, 2, 3. How many you got, Polly?
John is on all 3. Tim is on all 3. You are on AFSMI. And you are on administration. So that was 1.5. And then I was given 1, the teachers. And I just think, a negotiating team, if you have the same team for all of the units, you know the whole thing. And to have different ones, well, you're going to come in, you didn't know this, and you didn't understand, you spend hours, you know how many hours you spend.
2 of us are, so.
Yeah.
Just
I mean, I've
understanding things.
I've gotten a lot of experience over the years when it comes to negotiating. I think it was a fun, lengthy process. Okay, I mean.
What did you say? Fun?
Fun.
It's a fun, lengthy process. I mean, some of it was fun, some of it wasn't.
I think there's consistency and congruency, better understanding. If you have just one negotiating committee, just have them do it all. And if I'm not on that,
Okay.
that's fine. That would
On
just
the,
be my suggestion.
on the AFSMI, the reason I thought, and I will tell you up front, you would be negotiating for a relative.
There's no conflict of interest.
Oh, but that, in the eyes of the public,
Perception.
Oh, boy.
in the eyes of the public, it wouldn't look good.
Oh, I mean, I've been on there
Yeah.
before. Other people have been on there before, too. Same with teachers, same with administrators.
It was nothing against you. It was just,
I understand what you're saying, but
Yeah.
it's a non-issue, because others have served with relatives, too. Mary Spang, she had a daughter.
I'm not, don't go, I
She had a
mean,
daughter, and she had a son-in-law, so.
well, that was then.
Well,
I didn't think that was ethical. And there was a lot of things you didn't think were ethical, but we're off
Okay,
track.
fine.
Yeah.
Just forget it. I don't even care.
Okay? Yes, you do. You care. I know you do.
I don't care if I'm not on, I would rather have the same people be negotiating all three categories. That would be my most important, even if I weren't on it, okay? If it were the 3 of you, that'd be fine. That's my suggestion.
I can,
It's a lot of work.
yeah, I can tell you one thing that will change from our last negotiation. I was only on the teachers, is that we will be bringing updates to the board regular, and you will then have a chance for you, the input to say, oh, you're going in the right direction, or I in my past, so.
It's not the same as sitting there talking to the group that you're negotiating with. There's a lot of things a lot of detail in those meetings, so. So, okay, first of all, my first amendment, let's just vote it up and down, that Budget and Finance be committee of the whole.
So we got a,
I would second that.
okay. So we got a vote for the friendly amendment.
No, it's just an
An amendment
It's my
to
amendment.
make the Budget and Finance a committee of the whole.
Committee of the whole, yep.
Okay, we got a Support by Director,
Support by
motion by Director Sorkin, support by Director Westby. Any discussion?
I can get on board with budget and finance, but I think that the rest of it, I think that the way you did the rest of it is fine.
Oh, we're voting on that one right now.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
No. So what is it?
What did you
Three.
vote, Bill?
3-3, I voted no. 3-3,
Bill, John, Tim,
so it fails for the,
So can I just,
and you voted,
I voted for
For
it,
it.
yeah.
okay.
can I ask a question why you wouldn't want all of us to be privy of budget?
Can't ask me that.
I am.
I will. I trust, it's like any,
It's not a trust issue.
I said, I trust anybody that's on a committee will do the best job they will. They will learn more about being a good school board member, and they'll bring the best recommendation back to us.
That's not a trust issue, and that's not my point. My point is we all should have as much information as we can. And you know that all information, especially with budget, does not come back to all board members. And even the discussion around a committee table is important for understanding.
I can go either way.
Well,
It doesn't matter to me, I can go
yeah,
either way.
It
We
failed.
just voted, it failed.
Yeah.
But we can make another motion to keep it as it is.
That's what the,
That would be the main motion,
yeah,
Brian.
but you have another friendly amendment, or you?
I do. I would like to be added as a second person of the liaison to Evelyn, because now we're talking about a advisory board and one representative. I think it'd be better with two.
So you want to be an alternate to John?
I would like to be an equal that has the same contacts, the same liaison opportunities and responsibilities, instead of having one to have two. And I would like to be the second one. You know, for Gilbert and for Virginia, you may not request that, but I am
I
requesting.
want Virginia to have two. No, I'm just kidding.
I want Brandy, you need to come on Gilbert. So we have a friendly amendment to add Polly to the city council liaison. That's what your friendly amendment. Can I get a motion to add her with John?
That's my motion, it's my amendment,
Okay, it's your motion.
not to exclude anybody, just to add.
Motion by Director Sorkin. Any support? Any support? Without having any support, the motion fails to move forward.
Okay, and my third one is that negotiations, all three areas be the same team. For consistency, congruency, and.
So John, so that means you would go up to AFSMI.
Is there support?
John is in AFSCME,
Is there support?
and that would be you, Bill,
Motion,
you, Bill.
motion by Director Sorkin. Can I get a support for Polly to be on all three?
No, I wasn't that at all. I said just so all three are the same negotiators for all three groups and units. For consistency.
Well, John's there, Tim is here, Bill Addy's here. That either,
That takes me off and adds you, Bill, that's all. So now all three of you will negotiate all three. It's pretty
Okay.
hard for me to jump in or for you to jump in for the teachers or the administration instead of, being familiar.
okay, so the motion is so now you want out.
Oh, you know what? That would be easier. I'll just take my
Out?
name off the list, yeah. So we don't need a
Okay.
motion.
Okay, all right.
Have consistent negotiations.
Okay, all right, thank you. So everybody change their list. Okay, with that being said, and all those friendly amendments, can I get a motion to consider?
Nope, there already is one.
Yep, a motion by Director and support by Director Yuhan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes 5-1. Meeting announcements. I'll just tell you that there's a basketball game this Friday night at the new gym. I do believe there's an admission charge, correct? Just to make sure people ain't going. 3 games, 1 admission, right? So you walk in and you're good for, yeah, all right.
Have to hide under the bleachers.
Yeah, you don't have to hide under the bleachers.
the next-
And it starts at what time? Is it?
5:45, I believe.
The girls' game, there's a JV game that's early, like 3:30-ish,
Okay,
and then the guys' game starts 7:30-ish,
okay.
7:15-ish.
All right, so if you're in the building, I think you don't pay for JV, do you? Or whatever, or I can't remember.
Yeah, you do.
I don't
Yeah.
remember.
Okay, I will
I
be,
think you do.
Yeah, you do, because in hockey you do.
I will be gone, out of town.
No, yeah,
Okay, gone,
no, for what?
okay?
If I may,
And on the 27th. So I would ask, I would ask board
John?
members to give John your support and your
Patience.
and patience
be fine.
and guidance as he sits in as the acting board chair that night.
He'll be fine.
Probably done this before.
I know.
He'll be fine.
Yeah.
Big shoes to fill.
Huh? No shoes to fill. No. So with that being said, our next board meeting is is February 27th. I will not be here 6 PM here at the building. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion.
Support.
Director Westby, ooh.
that didn't take much time.
Oh, support by Director Westby, support by Director Lotiger. Thank you.
Good meeting,
Adjourn.
good meeting, good job.